The envelope arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, cream-colored and expensive, the kind that promised something formal inside. Natalie Robinson sat at her modest kitchen table, her hand resting on her swollen belly, 6 months pregnant and tired from a day of working from home. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Brandon's. Her ex-husband. Her fingers trembled slightly as she opened it, though she told herself she shouldn't care anymore. The divorce had been finalized 4 months ago, just 2 months after she discovered she was pregnant. 2 months after she found him in their bed with Amber Cross, the woman he claimed was just a colleague. The invitation slid out, printed on heavy cardstock with gold lettering. Preston Technologies Annual Gala. Her eyes scanned down to the handwritten note at the bottom, and her stomach turned. Natalie thought you might want to see what real success looks like. Amber and I are doing amazing at Preston Technologies. I'm a senior consultant now and she's in marketing. Maybe seeing how well we're doing will motivate you to finally get your life together. We even got you a +1 invite, though I doubt you'll bring anyone. See you there or don't. Either way, we'll be having the time of our lives. Brandon. Natalie read it 3 times, each time feeling a different emotion. First came the hurt, sharp and familiar. Then anger, hot and rising. Finally, something else settled over her. Something cold and calculating. She set the invitation down and reached for her phone, scrolling through her contacts until she found the name she needed. Jerome Patterson. Her lawyer, business partner, and one of the few people who knew the truth about her current situation. Jerome, it's Natalie. Hey, how are you feeling? Is the baby okay? His warm voice came through the speaker, genuinely concerned. We're both fine. I need you to tell me the acquisition went through. Please tell me we closed the deal on Preston Technologies. There was a pause, then a chuckle. It went through yesterday. All the paperwork is signed. You officially own Preston Technologies as of midnight last night. What? What's going on? Natalie picked up the invitation again, a slow smile spreading across her face. Because my ex-husband and his mistress just invited me to the company gala. They think I'm some pathetic woman they can mock. They have no idea who really owns the company they work for. Oh, this is going to be good, Jerome said. When's the gala? Saturday night. 3 days from now. So what's the plan? Natalie stood up, walking to the window of her small apartment. It wasn't much to look at, this place. She'd rented it after the divorce because Brandon had kept their house. He kept almost everything, actually. Her lawyer at the time had been useless, and Brandon's family had money for the best attorneys. She'd walked away with barely anything, pregnant and alone. But what Brandon didn't know, what nobody knew except Jerome and her accountant, was that Natalie had spent the last 6 months building something extraordinary. The plan is simple, Natalie said softly. I'm going to that gala. I'm going to let them have their moment of thinking they've won. And then I'm going to introduce myself as the new CEO of Preston Technologies. And then I'm going to fire both of them. Jerome laughed outright. I love it. But Natalie, are you sure you want to do this? I know how hard the divorce was. Seeing them together, especially now that you're pregnant, it might be more difficult than you think. Natalie placed her hand on her belly, feeling the gentle flutter of movement inside. Her daughter. She was having a girl, though she hadn't told anyone yet. This baby was her secret, her joy, her reason for everything she'd done over the past 6 months. I'm sure, she said firmly. Brandon took everything from me. He cheated, he lied, and he convinced everyone that I was the problem in our marriage. He took credit for business ideas I developed. He left me with nothing while he moved on with Amber like I never existed. But you know what? He did me a favor. How do you figure? Because losing everything forced me to remember who I was before I met him. Before I spent years supporting his dreams while putting mine aside. I remembered that I'm smart, Jerome. Really smart. And I took that intelligence and I built something real. She wasn't exaggerating. After the divorce, Natalie had been at her lowest point. Pregnant, broke, living in a friend's spare room. But she'd had one asset that nobody could take from her, her mind. She'd spent years working in tech development, always in the background, always letting others take credit. During her marriage to Brandon, she developed several innovative concepts for business software, ideas she'd shared with him over dinner and late-night conversations. He'd brushed them off as interesting but impractical. But Natalie knew they weren't impractical. They were brilliant. So she'd taken her best idea, a revolutionary data management system for small businesses, and she'd coded it herself. Working from her friend's apartment, surviving on savings and determination, she'd built a prototype in 3 weeks. Jerome had been her neighbor in that apartment building, a corporate lawyer who'd recognized her potential immediately. He'd helped her file the patent, connected her with investors, and within 2 months she'd sold the software to a major tech corporation for an amount that made her head spin. $50 million. She'd taken that money and invested it carefully, working with financial advisors who understood her vision. She'd purchased struggling tech companies, restructured them, and sold them for profit. Within 6 months, her net worth had grown to over $2 billion. And 3 weeks ago, when Preston Technologies had come on the market after their CEO retired, Natalie had made her move. She'd purchased it through a shell corporation, keeping her identity completely anonymous. The board of directors didn't know who she was. The employees didn't know. And certainly Brandon and Amber had no idea. "I need you to prepare termination papers," Natalie said, her voice steady. "For Brandon Robinson and Amber Cross. I want everything legal and airtight. I'm not firing them out of spite. I'm firing them because I'm going to audit that company thoroughly, and I have a feeling we'll find plenty of legitimate reasons." "Already on it," Jerome replied. "I started looking into their employment records after you mentioned buying Preston. Natalie, there's some concerning stuff here. Brandon's expense reports have irregularities. And Amber, she's been involved in some questionable marketing practices. Complaints from other employees about favoritism and bullying. Document everything. I want this to be clean. When I fire them, it won't be because they hurt me. It'll be because they're bad employees who don't deserve to work at my company." "Understood. What about the gala itself?" "You'll need to make an entrance." Natalie looked down at her swollen belly. "I'm 6 months pregnant, Jerome. I think I'll make an entrance no matter what I wear." "True, but let's make sure it's the right kind of entrance. You're not showing up as Brandon's pathetic ex-wife. You're showing up as a billionaire CEO who's about to change their lives forever. I'll need a dress. Something that shows I'm pregnant and proud of it. Something that says I've moved on and moved up. I know a designer who can help. She specializes in maternity formal wear. I'll set up an appointment for tomorrow. Thank you, Jerome. For everything. I couldn't have done any of this without you." "You absolutely could have," he said gently. "I just helped facilitate what you were capable of all along. That brilliant mind of yours, that determination, that's all you, Natalie." After hanging up, Natalie sat back down at the kitchen table and read the invitation one more time. This time she didn't feel hurt or angry. She felt powerful. Brandon thought he'd destroyed her. He thought leaving her pregnant and alone would break her completely. Instead, he'd freed her to become someone she'd never been able to be while married to him. Someone strong. Someone successful. Someone who didn't need anyone else to define her worth. She thought about the night she'd discovered the affair. She'd come home early from a work trip, exhausted and looking forward to surprising Brandon with dinner. Instead, she'd walked into their bedroom and found him with Amber. The woman had smirked at her, actually smirked, before gathering her clothes and leaving. Brandon had barely apologized. He'd said he'd fallen out of love with Natalie years ago. That she was boring, focused only on work, never spontaneous or fun. He said Amber understood him in ways Natalie never could. 2 weeks later, Natalie discovered she was pregnant. She told Brandon, hoping maybe it would change things. Instead, he'd asked if she was sure it was his. That question had cut deeper than anything else. The divorce had been swift and brutal. Brandon's lawyers had painted her as an unstable woman who'd trapped their client with a pregnancy. They'd argued that she was entitled to nothing because she'd been the one with emotional problems that drove Brandon away. And Natalie's lawyer, inexperienced and overwhelmed, had failed to fight back effectively. She'd signed the papers and walked away with almost nothing. Brandon had kept the house they'd bought together, the car, most of their savings. She'd been too tired to fight, too heartbroken to care. But that had been 6 months ago. 6 months was a long time. Long enough to grieve. Long enough to get angry. And long enough to do something about it. Natalie stood and walked to her small home office, a converted bedroom with a desk and a computer. On the wall, she'd hung a single photograph. It was from her college graduation 12 years ago. She stood between her parents, all of them beaming. Her father had died 2 years after that photo was taken. Her mother had followed 3 years later. Natalie had no siblings, no extended family. She'd been truly alone when the divorce happened. No one to call, no one to lean on. Brandon had been her world, and losing him had felt like losing everything. But looking at that photo now, she saw something different. She saw a young woman full of potential, someone who'd graduated top of her class with a degree in computer science and business. Someone who'd had dreams of starting her own company someday. She'd set those dreams aside when she met Brandon. He'd been charming and ambitious, and she'd fallen hard. She'd supported him through business school, working 2 jobs to pay their bills while he focused on his studies. She believed in his vision of them building a life together. But his vision had only included him at the top and her supporting from below. Every idea she'd shared, every contribution she'd made, he'd either dismissed or claimed as his own. And she'd let him because she'd loved him and believed that his success was their success. She knew better now. His success had only been his. Her success, the empire she was building, that was all hers. The baby kicked, a firm little jab against her ribs. Natalie smiled and rubbed the spot gently. "It's going to be different for you," she whispered. "You're going to grow up watching your mother run a company. You're going to see what real strength looks like. And you're never going to settle for someone who makes you small." Saturday couldn't come fast enough. The boutique specialized in elegant maternity wear, the kind of place Natalie would never have felt comfortable entering during her marriage. Brandon had always controlled their finances, giving her an allowance for personal expenses while maintaining full access to their accounts. She'd learned to make do with sales and secondhand stores. Now, standing in the plush fitting room surrounded by mirrors and soft lighting, watching a designer pin an emerald green gown to perfectly accommodate her growing belly, Natalie felt the full weight of how much had changed. "The color is perfect with your skin tone," the designer, a woman named Patricia, said as she adjusted the draping. "And the empire waist will give you room to breathe while still looking elegant. You'll be the most beautiful woman at that gala." Natalie studied her reflection. The dress was stunning, made of silk that caught the light beautifully. The deep V-neck was elegant without being revealing, and the way the fabric draped over her pregnant belly made her look regal rather than awkward. "It's perfect," she said softly. "You seem nervous," Patricia observed, standing back to admire her work. "Special event? You could say that. I'm going to be seeing my ex-husband and his mistress for the first time since the divorce." Patricia's expression tightened with sympathy. "Oh honey, I'm sorry. That must be difficult, especially now." She gestured to Natalie's belly. "It was his baby I was pregnant with when he left me for her," Natalie said, surprising herself with how easily the words came out. She hadn't talked about it much with anyone except Jerome. "What a fool," Patricia said firmly. "But you look amazing, and that's the best revenge." Natalie smiled slightly. "Actually, I have something better than that planned." She thought back to the years with Brandon, how blind she'd been to who he really was. They'd met at a tech industry mixer 10 years ago. She'd been 25, fresh from graduate school and working as a junior developer at a software company. He'd been 28, charming and confident, 3 months into his MBA program. He'd approached her at the bar, complimented her insights during a panel discussion, and asked for her number. Their first date had lasted 6 hours, conversation flowing easily. He'd seemed genuinely interested in her work, her ideas, her dreams. They'd married after dating for 2 years. It had been a small wedding since Natalie's parents had already passed away and Brandon was estranged from most of his family. Just a courthouse ceremony and dinner with a few friends. The first year had been good. They'd lived in a small apartment, both working hard to build their careers. Natalie had been promoted twice, her innovative coding solutions earning recognition from her supervisors. Brandon had been finishing his MBA, studying constantly. The second year was when things started to shift. Brandon graduated and got a job at a consulting firm. Suddenly, he needed nicer clothes, had to attend networking events, required her to be more social and polished when meeting his colleagues. Natalie had tried. She'd bought new outfits she couldn't afford, attended boring dinner parties, smiled through conversations with people who looked down on her because she was a coder rather than a consultant or executive. And slowly, imperceptibly, she'd started making herself smaller. When Brandon suggested she take a less demanding job so she could manage their home better, she'd agreed. When he said her ideas for starting her own software company were impractical and risky, she'd shelved them. When he critiqued her appearance, her cooking, her social skills, she'd worked harder to meet his standards. By year 5, Natalie barely recognized herself. She'd become someone whose entire identity revolved around supporting Brandon's career and managing his life. Her own ambitions had faded into background noise. She'd suggested they have children multiple times over the years. Brandon had always said no, claiming they needed to wait until his career was more established, until they had more money, until the timing was better. She'd accepted his reasoning even though part of her ached for a baby. Then came year 8. Brandon got hired at Preston Technologies as a consultant. He'd been excited about the opportunity, the prestige of working for such a well-known company. Natalie had been happy for him. That's when he met Amber Cross. She worked in the marketing department, young and ambitious and everything Natalie had stopped being. Brandon started working late, attending after-work events, traveling for conferences. Natalie had suspected something was wrong but pushed the thoughts away. She trusted him. More than that, she'd been so worn down by years of making herself smaller that she didn't have the energy to confront what she feared might be true. The night she discovered them together had been 3 weeks before their 10th anniversary. She'd returned early from a work trip, a rare bit of travel her company had sent her on for a training program. She'd been excited to surprise Brandon, maybe reconnect with him after months of feeling disconnected. Walking into their bedroom and seeing them together had shattered something inside her. But what hurt more than the betrayal itself was Amber's reaction. The smirk. The casual way she gathered her clothes and walked past Natalie like she was nothing. Like she didn't matter. Brandon had sat up in bed, not even having the decency to look ashamed. "I was going to tell you eventually," he'd said. "This isn't working anymore, Natalie. You and me. It hasn't worked for a long time. So you cheated?" Her voice had been small, broken. "I found someone who actually understands me. Someone exciting." "You've become so boring, Natalie. All you do is work and come home and work some more. When's the last time we did anything fun? When's the last time you laughed or tried something new?" The accusations had stung because part of her believed them. She had become boring. She'd given up so much of herself that there wasn't much left to be interesting. "I want a divorce," Brandon had said. "I'll have my lawyer contact you." Natalie had moved into a hotel that night, then to a friend's spare room a few days later. 2 weeks after that, she'd missed her period and taken a pregnancy test. Positive. She told Brandon over the phone because she couldn't bear to see him in person. There had been a long silence, then, "Are you sure it's mine?" Those words had broken something that couldn't be repaired. Whatever love she'd still held for him, whatever hope she'd harbored that they might work things out, died in that moment. "Yes, I'm sure," she'd said coldly. "But don't worry. I don't want anything from you. This baby is mine." The divorce proceedings had been a nightmare. Brandon's lawyer had been aggressive and cruel, questioning everything about Natalie from her mental stability to her fitness as a mother. Her own lawyer had been inexperienced and overwhelmed. In the end, she'd signed away almost everything just to make it stop. The house, the savings, most of their shared assets. She'd been too exhausted to fight, too heartbroken to care about material things when her whole life was falling apart. Standing in that friend's spare room 3 months later, broke and pregnant and feeling utterly defeated, Natalie had hit rock bottom. She remembered sitting on the edge of the bed, hand on her barely showing belly, and wondering how she was going to survive. That's when something inside her had shifted. She'd looked around that tiny room at her few possessions and boxes, at the pregnancy books she'd bought with her last few dollars, and she'd made a decision. She wasn't going to survive. She was going to thrive. But not by following anyone else's path or trying to fit into anyone else's vision of who she should be. She was going to become exactly who she was meant to be all along. She'd opened her laptop and started coding. The idea she'd had years ago, the data management system she'd mentioned to Brandon and he'd dismissed, she pulled it out of storage in her mind and started building it. For 3 weeks she'd barely slept. She coded 18 hours a day, living on cheap food and determination. Her friend had worried about her, but Natalie had explained she was working on something important. When the prototype was finished, she'd shown it to Jerome, her neighbor who she'd talked to occasionally in the hallway. He was a corporate lawyer with connections in the tech industry. He'd taken one look at her work and said, "This is worth millions." He'd been right. With Jerome's help navigating the legal aspects and connecting her with the right investors, Natalie had sold her software to a major corporation for $50 million. The day the money hit her account, she'd sat in stunned silence for an hour. Then she'd called her doctor to schedule a proper prenatal checkup with a good obstetrician. She'd found a decent apartment and paid the lease for a year in advance. And she'd started planning her next move. Jerome had introduced her to financial advisors who understood tech investments. They'd helped her identify struggling companies with good bones, companies that just needed better management and vision. She'd bought 3 small tech firms over the next 4 months, restructured them, and sold them for substantial profits. Her net worth had grown exponentially. By month 5 she was worth over $1 billion. By month 6 that number had doubled. And then Preston Technologies had come on the market. The retiring CEO wanted to sell to someone who would maintain the company culture and protect the employees. The board was looking for the right buyer. Natalie had seen the opportunity immediately. She'd had Jerome structure the purchase through a shell corporation to keep her identity hidden. She'd offered a fair price and emphasized her commitment to the employees. The board had accepted her offer. She'd spent the last 3 weeks reviewing every aspect of the company. Personnel files, financial records, operational procedures. And she'd discovered some interesting things about Brandon Robinson and Amber Cross. Brandon had been falsifying expense reports, claiming business dinners and travel that never happened. Small amounts, hard to notice individually, but adding up to over $30,000 over the past year. He'd also been taking credit for work done by junior consultants, presenting their ideas as his own in meetings with clients. Amber had been even worse. She'd been bullying younger employees, stealing their work, and creating a toxic environment in the marketing department. Multiple complaints had been filed with HR, but the previous management had ignored them because Amber brought in clients through her connections. Neither of them were assets to the company. They were liabilities. And Natalie was going to remove them, not because they'd hurt her personally, but because they didn't deserve to work at her company. All finished, Patricia said, stepping back from the gown. Go ahead and move around, make sure you're comfortable. Natalie walked around the fitting room, twisted gently side to side, raised her arms. The dress moved with her beautifully, comfortable despite its elegance. It's perfect, she said again. You're going to wow them, Patricia said with a smile. Whatever you have planned for that ex-husband, he's going to regret everything. Natalie looked at herself in the mirror, really looked. She saw a strong woman, a pregnant woman, a successful woman. She saw someone who'd survived the worst and come out better for it. He already should regret it, Natalie said quietly. But he's about to regret it a whole lot more. Jerome's office overlooked the city from the 42nd floor of a gleaming high-rise. Natalie sat across from his desk, reviewing the final documents for Preston Technologies while her lawyer pored over the personnel files spread between them. This is worse than I thought, Jerome said, shaking his head. Brandon's expense fraud goes back almost 2 years, not just one. And look at this, he slid a document across the desk. He's been coaching Amber on how to hide her own questionable expenses. They've been working together to steal from the company. Natalie read through the evidence carefully. Brandon had submitted false receipts for dinners that never happened, hotel stays that were actually personal trips, conference registrations for events he never attended. Amber had done similar things, plus she'd been using company resources for personal projects, hiring vendors for her side business and charging it to Preston Technologies. How did this go unnoticed for so long? Natalie asked. The previous CEO was hands-off, trusted his department heads too much. And Brandon and Amber were smart about it. They kept the amounts small enough to avoid triggering automatic audits. But when you add it all up, Jerome pulled out a calculator and ran the numbers. We're looking at over $60,000 in fraudulent expenses between the two of them. More than enough to justify termination for cause, Natalie said. Absolutely. No severance, no negotiation. They'll be lucky if the company doesn't press charges. I don't want to press charges, Natalie said firmly. I just want them gone. Pressing charges would drag this out, keep them in my life longer. I want them fired and forgotten. Jerome nodded. I understand. The termination letters are ready. I'll have security standing by at the gala. Once you make the announcement that you're the new CEO, I'll hand them their letters personally. Natalie appreciated Jerome's steady presence through all of this. He'd become more than just her lawyer over the past months. He was a genuine friend, someone who believed in her and supported her vision. Tell me about the other employees, she said. I want to know who's been suffering under Brandon and Amber's management. Jerome pulled out another folder. Marketing department has 6 complaints on file about Amber. All from younger employees, mostly women. They describe a pattern of bullying, idea theft, and creating a hostile work environment. 3 of those employees have already left the company. The ones who stayed did so because they need the jobs and couldn't afford to leave. I want to meet with them personally after the gala, Natalie said. I want them to know that behavior won't be tolerated anymore. Good. And in Brandon's department, there's a junior consultant named Timothy Chen who's been doing exceptional work. According to his file, he's developed some innovative client strategies, but Brandon has been presenting them as his own ideas. Timothy hasn't complained because he's afraid of retaliation. Natalie made a note on her tablet. I want to meet with Timothy too. If his work is as good as you say, he deserves recognition and probably a promotion. See, this is why I knew you'd be a great CEO, Jerome said with a smile. You actually care about the people, not just the profits. The people are what make a company successful, Natalie replied. I learned that by watching bad managers like Brandon. He always treated people as disposable, as tools to advance his own career. I saw how it affected his teams, How much talent he wasted because he couldn't see past his own ego. She thought about the years she'd watched Brandon interact with colleagues. He'd been charming to superiors, dismissive to peers, and cruel to anyone he considered beneath him. She'd made excuses for his behavior, told herself he was just ambitious and competitive. Now she recognized it for what it was. Brandon was simply a man who'd never developed real skills of his own, so he'd learned to take credit for other people's work and manipulate his way up the ladder. What about the board? Natalie asked. Do they know who I am yet? Not yet. The acquisition was handled through the Shell Corporation. They know they have a new owner, but they don't know it's you. That reveal will happen at the gala when you take the stage. How do you think they'll react? Honestly, I think they'll be relieved. The previous CEO left because he was frustrated with the direction the company was heading. Too much internal politics, not enough focus on innovation. You're going to bring fresh energy and vision. Once they see what you have planned, they'll support you. Natalie had spent the last week developing a comprehensive plan for Preston Technologies. She wanted to expand their software development division, invest in emerging technologies, and create a company culture that valued creativity and collaboration over internal competition. I've been thinking about the gala speech, she said. I don't want it to be about Brandon and Amber. I want it to be about the company's future, about building something better. Smart, Jerome agreed. Taking the high road will earn you respect. Let the evidence speak for itself when you fire them. You don't need to air their dirty laundry publicly. Exactly. I want people to remember this night as the beginning of something positive, not just as revenge against my ex-husband. Though she couldn't deny that part of her was looking forward to seeing Brandon's face when he realized who she'd become. The last time they'd spoken had been during the final divorce proceedings, when he'd looked at her with such dismissiveness, like she was a problem he was glad to be rid of. She wondered what he'd been telling people about her. Probably that she was a mess, struggling to make ends meet, bitter about the divorce. He'd always been good at crafting narratives that made him look better. The truth was so much sweeter than any lie he could tell. I got you something, Jerome said, reaching into his desk drawer. He pulled out a small velvet box and slid it across the desk. Natalie opened it to find a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm. A phoenix rising from flames. Jerome, this is beautiful. I saw it and thought of you, he said simply. You rose from the ashes of your old life and became something stronger. Seemed fitting. Natalie fastened the bracelet around her wrist, blinking back unexpected tears. Thank you. For everything. I don't know what I would have done without you these past months. You would have figured it out. You're one of the smartest, strongest people I know. I just helped point you in the right direction. Still, most lawyers wouldn't have believed in a broke, pregnant divorcee living in a friend's spare room. Most lawyers wouldn't have recognized brilliance when they saw it, Jerome countered. That prototype you built, it was clear you had real talent. I just helped you monetize it. They spent the next hour going over final details for the gala. Natalie would arrive alone, make a quiet entrance, and let Brandon and Amber have their moment of thinking they'd won. Then, when the board chairman called her to the stage to introduce the new CEO, she'd reveal herself. Jerome had coordinated with security to have personnel ready to escort Brandon and Amber from the building once they were terminated. Their access badges would be deactivated immediately, their company email accounts locked, their office contents boxed and shipped to their homes. It would be clean, professional, and final. Are you nervous? Jerome asked as they finished up. Surprisingly, no, Natalie said. I thought I would be. I thought seeing Brandon again would hurt, would bring back all those feelings of inadequacy and failure. But I just feel calm. Ready. That's growth, Jerome observed. You're not the woman he left 6 months ago. No, I'm not. That woman was someone who'd lost herself trying to be what someone else wanted. I'm not her anymore. Natalie stood, smoothing her hands over her belly. The baby was active today, probably responding to her elevated heart rate and the adrenaline flowing through her system. 2 more days, she said. 2 more days, Jerome confirmed. And then everything changes. That evening, alone in her apartment, Natalie tried on the emerald dress again. She'd picked up the final alterations from Patricia's boutique earlier, and the fit was perfect. She stood in front of the full-length mirror in her bedroom, studying her reflection. The woman looking back at her was someone she barely recognized from 6 months ago. Not just because of the pregnant belly or the expensive dress, but because of something in her eyes. Confidence. Strength. Purpose. She thought about the invitation Brandon had sent, with its mocking tone and cruel implications. He'd thought he was rubbing salt in her wounds, showing her how well he was doing without her. Instead, he'd given her the perfect opportunity to reveal just how far she'd risen. Natalie's phone buzzed with a text. It was from Rachel Torres, her new executive assistant at Preston Technologies. They'd been communicating remotely as Natalie prepared to officially take over the company. Everything is ready for Saturday. The ballroom looks amazing. The board is excited to meet you officially. And I have to tell you, I'm so glad you're the new owner. This company needs someone who actually cares. Natalie smiled and typed back, "Thank you, Rachel. I'm looking forward to working with you. Get some rest this weekend. Monday is going to be busy. Can't wait. See you Saturday night." Natalie set her phone down and carefully removed the dress, hanging it in the closet with care. She changed into comfortable pajamas and made herself a light dinner. Simple grilled chicken and vegetables, nothing fancy but nutritious for the baby. As she ate, she pulled out her tablet and reviewed the speech she'd written for the gala. She'd worked on it for days, revising and refining until every word felt right. It wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about Brandon and Amber. It was about vision, about building a company culture based on respect and innovation. It was about creating opportunities for people to do their best work and be valued for their contributions. That's what she wanted Preston Technologies to become. Not just a successful company but a good one. A place where people like Timothy could thrive instead of being exploited. Where young employees wouldn't be bullied by people like Amber. Where merit mattered more than manipulation. She thought about her baby due in 3 months. What kind of world did she want to bring her daughter into? What example did she want to set? The old Natalie would have walked away from the gala invitation, would have avoided confrontation, would have let Brandon and Amber win by default because fighting back felt too hard. The new Natalie understood that sometimes you had to fight, not out of spite or revenge, but because standing up for yourself and others was the right thing to do. Saturday couldn't come fast enough. The Preston Technologies annual gala was held at the Grand Sterling Hotel, a luxury venue with crystal chandeliers, marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Natalie arrived exactly on time, stepping out of the town car she'd hired for the evening. Her emerald green dress caught the light beautifully as she walked toward the entrance. She'd styled her hair in elegant waves that cascaded over her shoulders, and kept her makeup simple but polished. The silver phoenix bracelet from Jerome glinted on her wrist. She felt every eye turn toward her as she entered the ballroom. Whispers rippled through the crowd. She recognized some faces from her research into the company, employees she'd studied in preparation for this moment. The ballroom was decorated in silver and navy blue, the company colors. Round tables filled the space, each set with fine china and fresh flower arrangements. A string quartet played softly in one corner. On a raised platform at the far end, a podium stood ready for speeches. Natalie accepted a glass of sparkling water from a passing server and moved slowly through the crowd, observing. She wanted to get a feel for the people before revealing herself. "Excuse me," a young woman approached her hesitantly. She had kind eyes and a nervous smile. "I don't think we've met. I'm Rachel Torres. I work in executive management." "Natalie Robinson," she introduced herself, shaking Rachel's hand. "It's nice to finally meet you in person." Rachel's eyes widened in recognition. "Oh, you're here. I mean, of course you're here, but you're here. She glanced around nervously. "Does anyone else know?" "Not yet. That comes later. How are things looking?" "Good. The board members are all present. They're excited about the announcements tonight." Rachel lowered her voice. "And your, targets are holding court near the bar. They've been telling anyone who will listen about how pathetic his ex-wife is and how they can't believe she actually showed up." Natalie followed Rachel's gaze and spotted them. Brandon and Amber stood together, his arm around her waist possessively. He wore an expensive suit, probably bought with stolen company funds. Amber had on a tight red dress that was inappropriate for a corporate event. They were laughing, clearly enjoying themselves. "Are you okay?" Rachel asked gently. "This must be hard." "I'm fine," Natalie said honestly. "Actually, I'm better than fine. I'm about to enjoy this more than I probably should." "I don't blame you. What they did to you, I read the file you sent over. The affair, the divorce, leaving you pregnant. That's cruel." "It was. But you know what? They did me a favor. Losing everything forced me to find out who I really was. And who I am is so much more than who I was trying to be for him." "I admire that," Rachel said. "Most people would have stayed bitter. You turned it into something positive." "Well, I'm still going to enjoy firing them." Rachel laughed softly. "I'll enjoy watching that." Across the room, Brandon spotted Natalie. She watched his expression change from surprise to smug satisfaction. He said something to Amber, who turned to look. Amber's face twisted into a cruel smile. They started walking toward her. "Here we go," Rachel murmured. "It's fine," Natalie said calmly. "Let them have their moment." Brandon and Amber approached, both wearing expressions of mock sympathy that didn't reach their eyes. "Natalie," Brandon said, his voice dripping with false concern. "You actually came. I have to admit I'm surprised. This must be difficult for you, seeing how well Amber and I are doing." "Hello, Brandon." "Amber." Natalie kept her voice neutral, pleasant even. "Love the dress," Amber said, her tone making it clear she meant the opposite. "Very bold choice, showing off your pregnancy like that. Most women would try to hide it, especially in your situation." "My situation?" Natalie raised an eyebrow. "You know, single mother, struggling to make ends meet." "Sad really. Brandon told me you're living in some tiny apartment now. Such a change from the house you two used to share." "The house Brandon kept in the divorce," Natalie corrected mildly. "Well, he earned it," Amber said with a shrug. "He's the one with the successful career. You're just a coder, right? Do you even have a job right now?" "I work in tech development," Natalie said. "That's sweet," Brandon said patronizingly. "Listen, Natalie, no hard feelings about the invitation, right? We thought it would be good for you to see what's possible when you actually apply yourself. Maybe it'll motivate you to get your life together before the baby comes." "Oh, I have my life together," Natalie assured him. "Really?" Amber looked her up and down skeptically. "Because from where I'm standing, you're a divorced, pregnant woman with no husband and no prospects. That's not exactly having it together." Rachel stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "Excuse me, but who do you think you're talking to?" "It's okay, Rachel," Natalie said gently, placing a hand on her assistant's arm. "They're entitled to their opinions." "Rachel works here?" Brandon looked at the young woman dismissively. "In what department?" "Executive management," Rachel said tersely. "Ah, administrative work," Brandon said, clearly not caring. He turned back to Natalie. "So what have you been doing with yourself? Besides eating for two, obviously." The casual cruelty in his voice, the way Amber laughed at his joke, it all felt so familiar. This was who Brandon had always been, Natalie realized. She'd just been too busy trying to please him to see it clearly. "I've been busy," Natalie said simply. "Building things. Planning for the future." "Planning? That's rich. You were never good at planning, Natalie. Remember when you wanted to start that software company? I told you it was a ridiculous idea, that you didn't have the skills or the vision for it." "I remember. I was right, wasn't I? You gave up on that dream pretty quickly. You're not cut out for leadership or business ownership. You're better suited for taking orders, not giving them." "Is that what you think?" "It's what I know. Look at me, look at Amber. We're thriving. We're both on track for promotions here at Preston Technologies. We're making real money, building real careers. And you're just trying to survive." Natalie took a sip of her sparkling water, letting the moment stretch. She could see other people watching them now, sensing the tension. She recognized some board members observing the exchange with interest. "You know what's funny?" Natalie said conversationally. "You always did underestimate me, Brandon. Even when we were married. Every idea I had, every suggestion I made, you dismissed it. You made me believe I was less capable than I actually was." "Because you were," Brandon said bluntly. "Or whatever. The point is, I was the one with the business sense. You were just the tech geek who could code. That's not the same as being able to run things." Interesting perspective. It's the truth. And the sooner you accept that, the better off you'll be. Stop trying to pretend you're something you're not and focus on being a good mother to that baby. That's probably the best you can hope for at this point. Amber nodded in agreement. "He's just being honest, Natalie. Someone needs to be. You've always been mediocre at best. Brandon outgrew you. It's time you accepted that and moved on." "Oh, I've moved on," Natalie assured them. "Further than you can possibly imagine." "Sure you have," Brandon said with a laugh. "Listen, I'm glad you came tonight. It's good for you to see what success actually looks like. Maybe it'll light a fire under you to do something with your life besides feel sorry for yourself." "That's very thoughtful of you." "I'm a thoughtful guy. Ask anyone here. I'm well respected at this company. They value my contributions. They recognize talent when they see it." "Do they really?" "Absolutely. In fact, I heard through the grapevine that I'm up for a major promotion. The new owner, whoever they are, apparently reviewed the personnel files and was very impressed with my work. Natalie smiled. Is that right? It is. So while you're living in your little apartment, struggling to pay rent, I'll be moving up in the world. Number 2. We're going places, Natalie. Real places. I'm sure you are. The lights in the ballroom dimmed slightly, and a voice came over the speaker system. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats. We'll be starting the program shortly. Guess that's our cue, Brandon said. Enjoy the show, Natalie. Try not to feel too bad about yourself when you see how well the successful people are doing. He and Amber walked away, laughing together. Rachel looked at Natalie with concern. Are you all right? That was horrible. They're horrible people. I'm perfect, Natalie said serenely. In fact, I haven't felt this good in years. Come on, let's take our seats. She led Rachel to a table near the front, one that had been reserved for special guests. As people settled into their chairs, Natalie saw Brandon and Amber at a table in the middle of the room, still smiling and whispering to each other. The board chairman, an older gentleman named Robert Harrison, took the stage. He was a dignified man in his 60s with gray hair and kind eyes. Good evening, everyone, he began. Thank you all for attending this year's gala. It's been quite a year for Preston Technologies, full of changes and new opportunities. He went on to discuss the company's achievements over the past year, thanking various departments for their contributions. Natalie listened politely, but her mind was already on what came next. As many of you know, Robert continued, our beloved CEO retired 6 months ago. The board has spent considerable time searching for the right person to lead this company into the future. Someone with vision, integrity, and a genuine commitment to both innovation and our employees. Natalie felt her heart rate pick up slightly. This was it. I'm pleased to announce that we found that person. 3 weeks ago, Preston Technologies was acquired by a visionary leader in the tech industry. Someone who understands where this company has been and where it needs to go. Someone who's already begun implementing changes that will benefit everyone in this room. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Natalie saw Brandon lean over to whisper something to Amber, both of them looking pleased. This person has an impressive track record of identifying potential and turning struggling companies into industry leaders. They've built a reputation for treating employees with respect and fostering innovation. And they've agreed to take on the role of CEO, effective immediately. Robert paused for dramatic effect, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Natalie. He smiled warmly. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming the new CEO of Preston Technologies, Ms. Natalie Robinson. The room erupted. Some people gasped. Others began applauding uncertainly. But mostly, there was stunned silence as every head turned toward Natalie. She stood slowly, gracefully, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. She walked toward the stage with her head held high, her emerald dress catching the lights beautifully. As she passed Brandon and Amber's table, she saw their faces. Brandon had gone pale, his mouth hanging open in shock. Amber looked like she'd been slapped, her expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. Natalie didn't pause, didn't acknowledge them. She climbed the steps to the stage and shook Robert's hand. Welcome, Ms. Robinson, he said warmly. We're honored to have you leading this company. Thank you, Robert. The honor is mine. She turned to face the room, gripping the podium lightly. Her eyes swept across the faces staring back at her, landing briefly on Brandon and Amber before moving on. Good evening, she began, her voice steady and clear. I know this is a surprise for many of you. 6 months ago, I was at the lowest point of my life. I'd lost my marriage, my home, most of my possessions. I was pregnant and alone. Some people in this room probably thought I was finished. She paused, letting that sink in. But here's what I learned during that dark time. Sometimes losing everything is exactly what you need to find out who you really are. And who I am is someone who refuses to give up. Someone who takes her brilliant ideas and turns them into reality. Someone who builds things that matter. The room was completely silent now, everyone hanging on her words. I built a prototype for software that revolutionized data management. I sold it for $50 million. I took that money and invested it in struggling companies, turned them profitable, and built a business empire worth over $2 billion. And 3 weeks ago, I purchased this company because I saw its potential. Applause began to swell. Natalie raised a hand gently to quiet it. I'm not here to brag about my success. I'm here to talk about the future of Preston Technologies. Because this company has problems. Problems that need to be addressed if we're going to thrive moving forward. She pulled out her notes, though she barely needed them. Over the past weeks, I've conducted a thorough audit of operations. I've reviewed personnel files, financial records, and employee feedback. And I've discovered that we have a culture problem. We have employees who are bullied and exploited. We have leadership that takes credit for other people's work. We have people stealing from this company and creating toxic work environments. Now murmurs spread through the crowd again, some concerned, some curious. That ends today. Effective immediately, Preston Technologies will operate under new values. Respect, integrity, innovation, merit. These aren't just words. They're principles that will guide every decision we make. She looked directly at Brandon and Amber. To employees who have been suffering in silence, who have watched your ideas stolen or your contributions dismissed, I see you. Your work matters. Your talent matters. And you will be valued here. Applause erupted, genuine and enthusiastic this time. Natalie smiled. This company has incredible potential. We have brilliant people who just need the opportunity to shine. We're going to invest in new technologies, expand our development divisions, and create opportunities for growth and advancement based solely on merit and performance. She continued outlining her vision for the company, the changes she planned to implement, the investments she'd already approved. The audience listened intently, many nodding in agreement. When she finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood, genuinely excited about the direction the company was heading. Natalie stepped away from the podium as Robert returned to the microphone. Thank you, Ms. Robinson. That was inspiring. I think we can all agree that Preston Technologies is in excellent hands. As Natalie descended from the stage, she saw Jerome enter from a side door. He carried 2 folders and was accompanied by security personnel. He walked directly to Brandon and Amber's table. Natalie followed at a distance, watching. Brandon Robinson, Amber Cross, Jerome said formally. I'm Jerome Patterson, attorney for Preston Technologies. Please accept these termination letters. Your employment with this company is terminated effective immediately for cause. Security will escort you from the premises. Your personal belongings will be shipped to your homes tomorrow. Brandon snatched the letter, his hands shaking. You can't do this. I have rights. I'll sue. Read the letter, Mr. Robinson, Jerome said calmly. It outlines the evidence of expense fraud, false reporting, and theft of intellectual property from junior staff members. You're being terminated for cause, which means no severance. You're fortunate the company has decided not to press criminal charges. Amber had gone pale. This is her doing. That bitter woman is getting revenge. This is the result of a standard audit, Jerome corrected. Ms. Robinson's personal history with you is irrelevant. Your behavior and performance stand on their own, and both are unacceptable. Security moved forward, hands out to escort them away. Brandon stood abruptly, his chair falling backward. Natalie, he shouted across the room. You can't do this. You're nothing. You've always been nothing. This is all just luck. You'll fail. This company will collapse under your leadership. Natalie looked at him calmly. Goodbye, Brandon. As security led them toward the exit, Amber turned back one last time. This isn't over. Yes, Natalie said quietly, it is. They were removed from the ballroom. The doors closed behind them. And just like that, they were gone from Natalie's life. Rachel appeared at her side. That was incredible. The speech, the reveal, everything. You handled that perfectly. Thank you. Felt good. Really good. Robert approached with several board members. Ms. Robinson, that was masterfully done. Your vision for the company is exactly what we need. And your handling of the personnel issues was professional and appropriate. They spent the next hour networking, Natalie meeting employees and board members, discussing plans for the company. People approached her with enthusiasm and ideas. The energy in the room had shifted completely. Around midnight, as the gala wound down, Natalie stood by the windows looking out at the city lights. She felt her baby move, a gentle flutter that made her smile. Quite a night, Jerome said, joining her. Quite a night, she agreed. How do you feel? Natalie considered the question carefully. Free. For the first time in years, I feel completely free. Brandon doesn't have any power over me anymore. Neither does the past. It's all just starting now. What's the first thing you'll do as CEO? Meet with the employees who've been mistreated. Let them know things are changing. Promote people based on their actual contributions. Build something real here, something I can be proud of. And then I'm going to have my baby and show her that her mother is someone who doesn't give up, who turns pain into power, who builds the life she wants instead of settling for what others think she deserves. Jerome smiled. She's going to have an amazing role model. Natalie placed her hand on her belly, feeling the life growing inside her. I hope so. Because she deserves to grow up knowing that she can be anything, do anything, overcome anything. Just like her mother did. She looked out at the city, at the lights spreading in all directions, and felt a sense of peace settle over her. This was her moment. Her triumph. Not because she'd gotten revenge on Brandon and Amber, but because she'd proven to herself that she was capable of so much more than she'd ever believed. The old Natalie would have crumbled under their mockery tonight. Would have felt ashamed of her pregnancy and her situation. Would have believed their words about being mediocre and unsuccessful. But the new Natalie knew better. She knew her worth. And she was just getting started. Monday morning arrived bright and clear, the kind of day that felt full of possibility. Natalie woke early in her apartment, feeling the baby kick as she stretched. She'd barely slept, too energized by everything that had happened at the gala. Her phone had been buzzing constantly since Saturday night. News of the Preston Technologies ownership change and the dramatic terminations had spread quickly. Several business publications had already reached out for interviews. Social media was full of speculation and commentary. But Natalie wasn't focused on the external noise. Today was about setting the right tone for her tenure as CEO. She dressed carefully in a royal blue maternity suit that Patricia had custom-made for her. Professional, elegant, and comfortable. She wore her hair pulled back in a sleek bun and kept her jewelry minimal except for the Phoenix bracelet from Jerome. The drive to Preston Technologies headquarters took 20 minutes. The building was a modern glass structure in the business district, 15 floors of innovation and potential. Natalie had visited once during the acquisition process, but always after hours when the building was empty. This would be her first time entering as the acknowledged owner and CEO. Rachel met her in the lobby, looking professional in a green dress and carrying a tablet filled with the day's schedule. Good morning, Ms. Robinson. Your office is ready on the 15th floor. I've scheduled meetings with department heads starting at 10. The executive team is assembled in the main conference room whenever you're ready to meet them. Thank you, Rachel. Let's start with the executive team. They took the elevator to the 14th floor where the main conference room was located. Through the glass walls, Natalie could see 10 people seated around a large table, all looking somewhat nervous. Deep breath, Rachel said quietly before opening the door. Natalie entered with confidence. Every person at the table stood as she walked in. Good morning, everyone. Please sit down. She took the seat at the head of the table and looked at each person individually. She'd studied their files extensively and knew all their names, positions, and track records. I know Saturday night was eventful, she began with a slight smile. I want to start this morning by being clear about my intentions for this company and what I expect from all of you. She paused, gathering her thoughts. Preston Technologies has incredible potential. You all know that. We have talented people, strong client relationships, and a solid foundation. But we also have problems. The previous management structure allowed certain behaviors that undermined our culture and held us back from being truly excellent. Heads nodded around the table. That changes now. I'm implementing a new organizational structure based on merit, transparency, and genuine collaboration. Each of you has shown competence in your respective areas, but I need to know that you're committed to the vision I laid out Saturday night. She went around the table, asking each executive about their department, their challenges, and their ideas for improvement. Most responded thoughtfully, clearly relieved to be asked their opinion. The chief operations officer, a woman named Patricia, spoke up. Ms. Robinson, I want to be honest with you. There's been low morale in several departments. The previous management style was very top-down, very focused on internal competition rather than collaboration. People are afraid to share ideas because they've seen those ideas stolen or dismissed. Thank you for being direct, Natalie said. That's exactly the kind of honesty I need. What specific steps do you think would help improve morale? Patricia leaned forward. Recognition for actual contributions. Clear advancement criteria based on performance, not politics. And consequences for people who create toxic environments. All of which will be implemented immediately, Natalie confirmed. I've already asked HR to develop new performance evaluation systems. We're going to create clear pathways for advancement. And anyone who creates a hostile work environment will be addressed swiftly. The tension in the room visibly decreased. People began to sit up straighter, engage more actively. I also want to address the elephant in the room, Natalie said calmly. Yes, Brandon Robinson was my ex-husband. Yes, he and his mistress were working here when I purchased this company. But their terminations had nothing to do with personal revenge. They were terminated because the audit revealed serious violations of company policy and ethical standards. She pulled out a folder and slid copies of the audit summary across the table. Expense fraud, intellectual property theft, creation of hostile work environments. These behaviors would have resulted in termination regardless of who I am or what my personal history with them was. I want to be very clear about that. This company will operate on principles and evidence, not emotion. That's refreshing, the chief financial officer, a man named Thomas, said. The previous CEO often made decisions based on personal relationships rather than performance. That won't happen under my leadership, Natalie assured him. Now let's talk about the future. She spent the next hour outlining her vision. Expanded development divisions. Investment in emerging technologies. New client acquisition strategies. Employee development programs. Flexible work arrangements. Family-friendly policies. The executives responded with enthusiasm, offering suggestions and asking questions. By the time the meeting ended, Natalie felt confident she had their support. One more thing, she said as people began to gather their materials. My door is always open. Not just figuratively. I mean literally. If you need to discuss something, if you have concerns, if you have ideas, come see me. I can't fix problems I don't know about. After the executive meeting, Rachel guided her through a tour of the building. Natalie stopped at various departments, introducing herself to employees, asking about their work, listening to their ideas. In the marketing department, she noticed a young woman watching her with wide eyes. The woman's name tag read Sophie Martinez. Sophie, Natalie said, walking over. I saw your name in the files. You filed a complaint about workplace harassment 6 months ago. Sophie's expression closed off, defensive. Yes. Nothing came of it. I know. That was unacceptable. I want you to know that the person who harassed you no longer works here. And I've instructed HR to reopen all previous harassment complaints and take appropriate action. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. Really? You're really going to do something? I already have. Can you come to my office at 2 this afternoon? I'd like to hear your story properly and discuss how we can make sure this never happens to anyone else here. I'll be there. Thank you, Ms. Robinson. You have no idea what this means. Natalie continued her tour, making similar stops to talk with employees who'd been mistreated. Each conversation reinforced her determination to transform the company culture. At noon, she had lunch in her office, a bright corner space on the 15th floor with views of the city. Rachel brought in a salad and fruit along with a stack of messages. The press is going crazy, Rachel said, setting down the papers. Everyone wants an interview. Forbes, Fortune, Business Insider, Tech Weekly. They all want the story of the pregnant divorcee who became a billionaire CEO. Set up select interviews for next week, Natalie decided. I want to control the narrative. This isn't a revenge story or a rags to riches fairy tale. It's a business story about identifying opportunities and building something meaningful. Got it? Also, you have a visitor in reception. He says it's urgent. Who? Brandon Robinson. Natalie set down her fork slowly. I see. Does he know I'm aware he's here? Security called me before letting him in the building. I wasn't sure if you'd want to see him. Have security escort him out. Tell them if he returns, call the police for trespassing. He has no business here anymore. Will do. Rachel paused. Are you okay? I'm fine. Actually, I'm more than fine. Brandon showing up here proves he still thinks he has some kind of claim on my attention. He doesn't. He's irrelevant. But 10 minutes later, Rachel returned looking flustered. He won't leave. He's causing a scene in the lobby, demanding to see you, saying you owe him a conversation. Natalie sighed and stood. Fine. I'll handle this once and for all. Call security and have them standing by. She took the elevator down to the lobby. Through the glass doors, she could see Brandon pacing, his face red, his suit rumpled. He looked like he hadn't slept. Natalie pushed through the doors. Brandon, you need to leave. He spun toward her. Finally. Natalie, we need to talk. You can't just fire me like that. I have rights. You had rights which you forfeited when you committed fraud. Now you have nothing. Leave my building. Your building? He laughed bitterly. This is insane. None of this makes sense. How did you of all people, end up owning a multimillion-dollar company? It's not possible. It's not only possible, it's reality. I built something while you were busy taking credit for other people's work. Now leave. I need this job, Natalie. I need the income. Amber and I, we have expenses. We were planning to buy a house. You can't just destroy our lives because you're bitter about the divorce. I didn't destroy your life. You did that yourself when you chose to steal from this company. And I'm not bitter about the divorce, Brandon. I'm grateful for it. Grateful? He looked at her like she was crazy. I left you with nothing. Exactly. You left me with nothing, which forced me to build everything. You did me the biggest favor of my life, even if you didn't mean to. So what, you're just going to let me suffer? Let us both suffer? That's your revenge. This isn't revenge. This is consequences. You and Amber made choices. Bad choices. Unethical choices. Now you're experiencing the results of those choices. That's not my doing. That's yours. Brandon's expression shifted, became calculating. What if I tell people about your past? About how you were nothing before you met me? About how I supported you, built you up? Natalie laughed, genuinely amused. Go ahead. Tell anyone you want. The facts speak for themselves. I have a patent for revolutionary software. I have a documented track record of successful business acquisitions. I have $2 billion in assets. What do you have, Brandon? Expense, fraud, and stolen intellectual property? His face flushed darker. You think you're so smart now. You think you've won. But this is just luck. You'll fail. This company will fall apart under your leadership. If that happens, it happens. But at least I'll fail trying to build something real, not failing because I was too busy stealing and manipulating to develop any actual skills. You're enjoying this, he accused. You're enjoying seeing me like this. No, Natalie said honestly. I'm not enjoying it. I'm not feeling anything about you at all, Brandon. That's what you don't understand. You're not important to me anymore. You're not part of my life. You're just someone I used to know who made bad choices and is now dealing with the consequences. You can't just erase 10 years of marriage. I was your husband. I meant something to you. You did once. Then you cheated on me, left me pregnant, and spent our divorce proceeding trying to destroy what little I had left. You killed whatever I felt for you. And now there's just nothing. Security approached, two large men in uniform. Ms. Robinson, do you want us to remove him? Yes, please. And put him on the banned visitors list. If he returns, call the police. As security took Brandon's arms, he looked at Natalie with something like desperation. Natalie, please. I'm sorry. I know I messed up. But we have history. That has to count for something. It doesn't. Goodbye, Brandon. She turned and walked back into the building, not looking back as security escorted him out. Through the lobby windows, she watched them put him in his car and wait until he drove away. Rachel appeared at her side. You okay? I'm perfect. That needed to happen. Now he knows for sure that chapter of my life is closed. The rest of the day passed in meetings and planning sessions. At 2 o'clock, Sophie came to Natalie's office, nervous but determined. She told her story of how Amber had systematically bullied her, stolen her ideas, and created an environment so hostile that Sophie had considered quitting multiple times. But I need this job, Sophie said, wiping her eyes. I'm supporting my younger sister through college. I couldn't afford to leave, so I just tried to endure. You shouldn't have had to endure, Natalie said firmly. And you won't anymore. I'm promoting you to senior marketing associate with an immediate 20% salary increase. You'll report directly to the new marketing director we're hiring. And I want you to lead a team developing the campaign for our new product line. Sophie stared at her. Are you serious? Completely. I've reviewed your work. You're talented and creative. You deserve to have your contributions recognized. This is just the beginning. After Sophie left, practically floating with happiness, Rachel came in with more updates. Timothy Chin is here for his 4 o'clock meeting. He's the junior consultant who Brandon was exploiting. Send him in. Timothy was a young man, probably late 20s, with nervous energy and intelligent eyes. He shook Natalie's hand carefully. Thank you for seeing me, Ms. Robinson. Thank you for coming. Timothy, I've reviewed your work. The client strategies you developed were innovative and effective. Yet Brandon was taking credit for them. Timothy looked uncomfortable. I wasn't sure anyone would believe me if I complained. Brandon was well connected here. I believe you because the evidence supports it. Your work is documented under his name, but the writing style, the analytical approach, it's clearly different from his other reports. Plus, I found emails where you sent him drafts that he then presented as his own work. I should have said something. You were protecting yourself in an unfair situation. I understand that. But now things are different. I'm promoting you to senior consultant. You'll be taking over Brandon's former client accounts. And I'm giving you a 50% salary increase effective immediately. Timothy's jaw dropped. 50%? You've been underpaid for the work you actually do. That ends now. I'm also establishing a new policy. All work must be properly attributed. Anyone caught taking credit for someone else's contributions will be terminated immediately. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep doing excellent work. That's all I need. After Timothy left, looking dazed but thrilled, Natalie sat back in her chair and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. This was what power should be used for. Not to hurt people or get revenge, but to make things better, to recognize talent, to create opportunities. Jerome called at 6 o'clock. How was your first day as CEO? Exhausting and wonderful. I promoted people who deserved it, fired bad practices, and started implementing real changes. Feels good, Jerome. It feels right. And Brandon? Showed up trying to manipulate me into giving him his job back. Security removed him. He's banned from the property now. Good. He needs to learn that actions have consequences. He's learning. Whether he accepts those consequences or not is his problem, not mine. I'm proud of you, Natalie. You've handled all of this with remarkable grace and professionalism. Thank you. I couldn't have done it without your support. Yes, you could have. But I'm glad I could help. That evening, back in her apartment, Natalie made herself a simple dinner and sat on her small balcony watching the sunset. The baby was active, moving around like she was dancing. Natalie placed both hands on her belly and spoke softly. Today was a good day, little one. I helped people who deserved help. I made positive changes. I used the power I've built for good things. That's what I want you to remember as you grow up. Power isn't about revenge or hurting people. It's about making things better for everyone. The baby kicked in response and Natalie smiled. Your dad, he came by today. Tried to get me to feel sorry for him, to give him another chance. But you know what? I didn't feel sorry for him at all. I felt sorry for who I used to be when I was with him. That woman who made herself small, who accepted so little, who believed she didn't deserve better. She looked out at the city, at the lights beginning to twinkle as darkness fell. But that woman doesn't exist anymore. She died the day I found out about you, the day I realized I had to become strong enough for both of us. And in her place is someone better. Someone who knows her worth. Someone who builds empires and changes lives and refuses to settle for anything less than she deserves. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Natalie breathed in the evening air and felt peace settle over her. She'd faced Brandon today without fear, without anger, without anything but calm certainty that he no longer had any power over her. That realization was more satisfying than any revenge could have been. Tomorrow she'd continue the work of transforming Preston Technologies. She'd meet with more employees, implement more changes, build the company she envisioned. But tonight, she simply sat in the quiet, feeling her daughter move inside her, and enjoyed the sweet taste of true freedom. The media storm that followed the gala was intense. By Tuesday morning, Natalie's story was everywhere. Business publications, tech blogs, even mainstream news outlets had picked up the narrative of the pregnant CEO who'd bought her ex-husband's company and fired him for fraud. Natalie sat in her office, reviewing the various articles with Rachel. Most of the coverage is positive, Rachel noted, scrolling through her tablet. They're calling you a business genius, praising your success story. But there are some critics. There always are. What are they saying? That you bought the company purely for revenge. That you're letting personal feelings influence business decisions. A few are questioning whether the fraud allegations are legitimate or just a convenient excuse. Natalie had expected this. Set up a press conference for Thursday. I'll address these concerns directly. And make sure we release the audit findings publicly. I want complete transparency about why Brandon and Amber were terminated. The legal team advises against releasing the full audit. They say it could open the company to litigation. I don't care. I want the truth out there. People need to see that this was about business ethics, not personal revenge. Redact any information that could compromise ongoing investigations, but release everything else. Over the next few days, the story evolved. When the audit findings were released, public opinion shifted dramatically. The evidence of expense fraud, intellectual property theft, and workplace harassment was undeniable. Critics went silent as the facts spoke for themselves. Preston Technologies' stock price, which had dipped slightly after the dramatic terminations, rebounded strongly. Investors were encouraged by Natalie's transparency and her clear vision for the company's future. On Thursday, Natalie held her first press conference. The company's media room was packed with reporters, cameras, and microphones. She wore a burgundy maternity dress and had her hair styled professionally. She looked every inch the successful CEO she'd become. "Good morning," she began, standing at the podium with confidence. "I know there's been considerable interest in recent events at Preston Technologies. I'm here today to provide clarity and context." She went through the timeline methodically. Her acquisition of the company through proper legal channels. The comprehensive audit she'd ordered as standard practice. The discovery of violations. The terminations based on evidence. "I want to be very clear about something," she said, looking directly at the cameras. "Brandon Robinson was my ex-husband. That's true. But that fact did not influence his termination. The evidence of his wrongdoing was discovered through a routine audit conducted by independent accountants. The same audit that identified violations by other employees who have also been terminated." She paused, letting that sink in. Personal feelings have no place in business decisions. "I bought Preston Technologies because I saw its potential, not because Brandon worked there. In fact, I didn't know he worked there until after the acquisition was complete. His presence was coincidental, not causal." A reporter raised their hand. "Ms. Robinson, some critics suggest you're using your position to get revenge. How do you respond to that?" "I'd say those critics should review the evidence. Revenge would have been firing Brandon without cause, based solely on our personal history. Instead, he was fired because he stole from this company. There's a significant difference between consequence and revenge." Another reporter spoke up. "What about the claims that you're unqualified to run a major technology company?" Natalie smiled slightly. "I hold advanced degrees in computer science and business administration. I developed software that sold for $50 million. I've successfully acquired and restructured multiple companies. My qualifications speak for themselves. The real question is why anyone would think a successful track record makes me unqualified. But you're pregnant and single. Can you really handle the demands of being CEO under those circumstances?" "Yes. Women have been managing households, careers, and children for generations. Pregnancy doesn't make me incompetent, it makes me capable of multitasking at the highest level." The room chuckled at that. "Final question," Natalie said, pointing to a reporter in the back. "What's your message to other women who might be in similar situations? Facing divorce, financial hardship, feeling like they've lost everything?" Natalie took a moment to consider her answer carefully. "My message is this. Losing everything can be terrifying, but it can also be liberating. When you have nothing left to lose, you're free to take risks you never would have taken otherwise. You're free to bet on yourself, to pursue dreams you'd set aside, to become who you were always meant to be." She placed her hand on her belly naturally. "I was at my lowest point 6 months ago. Divorced, broke, pregnant, alone. Every external measure said I'd failed. But I realized something crucial during that dark time. Other people's opinions of me didn't define my worth or my potential. Only I could do that." The room was quiet, reporters listening intently. "So I stopped trying to be who everyone else thought I should be and started being who I actually am. Someone brilliant, capable, determined, and unwilling to accept less than I deserve. And once I made that shift, everything else followed." She looked directly at the cameras. "If you're struggling right now, if you feel defeated or worthless or like you'll never recover, I want you to know something. You're stronger than you think. You're more capable than anyone has probably told you. And you have the power to change your circumstances. It won't be easy. It will require work and sacrifice and courage. But it's possible. You're living proof of that," the reporter said softly. "I am. And so can anyone else be. It starts with refusing to stay defeated. It starts with believing you deserve better and being willing to work for it." The press conference ended to respectful applause. As Natalie left the podium, she felt a sense of completion. She told her story on her own terms with honesty and dignity. Back in her office, Jerome was waiting with a satisfied expression. "That was perfect. Exactly the right tone. You came across as strong, capable, and genuine. It was the truth. That's all I wanted to convey. Well, you succeeded. Social media is already responding positively. You're trending on multiple platforms. And I'm seeing a lot of women sharing their own stories of overcoming adversity, inspired by what you said." Natalie felt unexpected emotion well up. "Really? Really? You've become a symbol of resilience, whether you intended to or not." She sat down heavily, the weight of that responsibility settling on her shoulders. "I just wanted to tell my story. I didn't expect it to resonate so widely. Maybe that's why it does resonate. Because it's real. Because you're not presenting yourself as some perfect success story. You're showing the struggle, the pain, the work it took to get here. That evening, as Natalie scrolled through social media, she saw hundreds of messages from women sharing their own stories. Single mothers rebuilding their lives. Divorcees starting new careers. Women who'd been underestimated finding their strength. Each story touched her. Each one reminded her that her journey wasn't just about her anymore. It had become something bigger, a narrative about resilience and the refusal to stay defeated. But not all the response was positive. Brandon had been doing interviews of his own, telling a very different story. On a business podcast, he'd claimed that Natalie had targeted him specifically, that the fraud allegations were fabricated, that she'd bought the company purely to destroy his career. She was always jealous of my success, he'd said. When our marriage ended, she couldn't handle that I'd moved on with someone better. This is her revenge, pure and simple. Amber had echoed similar sentiments on social media, posting tearful videos about being unfairly terminated, about losing her career because of a bitter woman's vendetta. Rachel brought these to Natalie's attention. They're trying to control the narrative. Make themselves the victims. Let them, Natalie said calmly. The evidence speaks louder than their lies. Anyone who looks at the facts will see the truth. Don't you want to respond? Set the record straight. I already did. At the press conference. I'm not going to engage in a back and forth with them. That's exactly what they want, to drag me down to their level, to make this about personal drama instead of business ethics. Jerome agreed when she called him that evening. You're handling this correctly. Brandon and Amber are desperate. They're losing in the court of public opinion and they know it. Responding to every accusation they make will only give them more attention. It's hard though, Natalie admitted. Hearing them lie about me, twist the narrative, play victim. Part of me wants to fight back. But the smarter part of you knows that silence and success are the best response. Keep doing what you're doing. Transform Preston Technologies into something great. That's the ultimate answer to their accusations. He was right. Over the following week, as Natalie continued to implement positive changes at the company, public interest in Brandon and Amber's sob story faded. People stopped caring about their version of events because the reality of what Natalie was building was so much more compelling. Employee satisfaction scores at Preston Technologies went up dramatically. Several people who'd left the company under previous management reached out about returning. Client feedback became overwhelmingly positive as they experienced improved service and communication. The company was thriving and that success spoke volumes. But there were challenges too. Restructuring the organization meant difficult decisions. Some longtime employees who'd been underperforming needed to be let go. Some departments needed to be reorganized entirely. Not everyone was happy with the changes. A senior vice president who'd been with the company for 15 years came to Natalie's office to complain about the new performance evaluation system. This is too much change too fast, he said bluntly. You're disrupting systems that have worked for years. Systems that allowed fraud and harassment to flourish, Natalie countered. Systems that rewarded politics over performance. Those systems didn't work, they just existed. Easy for you to say. You show up after building some software and think you understand how to run a company. I don't just think I understand. I do understand. And if you're resistant to changes that improve accountability and transparency, perhaps you're concerned about how you'll perform under those new standards. He'd left her office angry, but he'd also started improving his performance. Sometimes people needed to be challenged to reach their potential. Not every confrontation ended positively though. One department head resigned rather than adapt to the new expectations. A few longtime clients pulled their contracts, uncomfortable with the leadership change. Each setback stung, but Natalie reminded herself that transformation was never smooth. She was building something better, and that required short-term discomfort for long-term gain. By the end of the second week, the dust was settling. The media had moved on to other stories. Brandon and Amber's attempts to position themselves as victims had largely failed. Preston Technologies was stabilizing under new management. Natalie sat in her office one evening, reviewing the week's accomplishments. Employee retention was up. Client satisfaction was up. Stock price was up. Revenue projections were up. By every measurable standard, the company was improving. Rachel knocked on the door frame. Heading home for the night. Need anything before I go? Actually, yes. I want to establish a foundation. Something focused on helping women rebuild their lives after divorce or other major setbacks. Scholarships, business grants, mentorship programs. That's a beautiful idea. Can you research what would be involved? I want to use some of my personal wealth for this. Not company money, but my own funds. I'll start looking into it tomorrow. What made you think of it? All the messages I've received. All the women sharing their stories. If my experience can help others avoid some of the pain I went through or overcome it faster, then something good will have come from all of this. Rachel smiled. You're remarkable, you know that? I'm just doing what makes sense. After Rachel left, Natalie sat in the quiet office, watching the city lights outside her window. She thought about how far she'd come in such a short time. From broken and defeated to powerful and purposeful. The journey hadn't been easy. There were still hard days, moments when doubt crept in, times when she wondered if she was making the right decisions. But overall, she felt more herself than she ever had. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she opened it. You think you've won. You haven't. I'll make sure everyone knows what you really are. A vindictive woman who destroyed innocent people to feel better about herself. It was from Brandon's number. Natalie deleted the message and blocked the contact. She wasn't going to let his bitterness touch her peace. She placed her hand on her belly, feeling the baby's now familiar movements. Your father is not a good man, she said softly. And I'm sorry you won't have him in your life. But you'll have me, and I promise that will be enough. I'll show you what real strength looks like. What integrity means. How to build a life based on your own merit, not by tearing others down. The baby kicked, a firm little jab that made Natalie smile. Yeah, I think you're going to be just fine. We both are. She gathered her things and headed home, leaving the office with a sense of satisfaction. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she was ready for them. She'd faced her past, dealt with it honestly, and moved forward with purpose. The fallout from her choices was settling into a new normal. A better normal. One where she stood tall in her own power, unafraid and unashamed. And that was worth every difficult moment it had taken to get here. 3 weeks into her tenure as CEO, Natalie called an all-hands meeting at Preston Technologies. Every employee, from entry-level staff to senior management, gathered in the main auditorium. Natalie stood on stage in a green maternity dress, 7 months pregnant now and visibly showing. She felt the baby move as she stepped to the podium, as if her daughter was encouraging her. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. I know these past weeks have been intense. Change is always difficult, especially change that happens quickly. But I wanted to bring everyone together to talk about where we're going as a company. She clicked a remote, and the screen behind her lit up with the new company vision statement. Preston Technologies is going to become a leader in ethical innovation. That means we're not just creating great products, we're creating them the right way. With respect for our employees, our clients, and our industry. She went through her plans in detail. New product lines in development. Expanded research and development budgets. Employee profit-sharing programs. Flexible work arrangements. Enhanced parental leave policies. Mental health support services. I know some of you were hurt by previous management practices, she said, her voice gentle but firm. Your ideas were stolen. Your contributions went unrecognized. You worked in environments that made you feel undervalued. I can't undo that harm, but I can make sure it doesn't happen again. She introduced the new HR director, a woman with an excellent reputation for creating positive workplace cultures. She outlined the new complaint process, the anonymous reporting system, and the zero-tolerance policy for harassment and intellectual property theft. Every person in this room matters, Natalie continued. Your work matters. Your ideas matter. And from this day forward, your contributions will be recognized and rewarded appropriately. The response was overwhelmingly positive. Applause filled the auditorium. Several employees had tears in their eyes. After the meeting, people lined up to speak with Natalie personally. To thank her for the changes. To share their ideas for the company's future. To express appreciation for being valued. One woman, probably in her 50s, waited until everyone else had gone before approaching. Ms. Robinson, I just wanted to say thank you. I've worked here for 20 years. I watched this company lose its way, become a place where politics mattered more than performance. I was planning to retire early just to escape it. But now, for the first time in years, I'm excited to come to work again. Thank you for staying, Natalie said sincerely. The company needs experienced people like you to help guide us forward. I'll do whatever I can to help. You're building something special here. Later that afternoon, Natalie met with a group of junior developers who'd requested time to present an idea. They filed into her office nervously, carrying laptops and presentation materials. Don't be nervous, Natalie said with a smile. I want to hear what you've been working on. The lead developer, a young man named Andre, set up his laptop. We've been developing a prototype for enhanced data security protocols. It's something we've been working on in our spare time because, well, under previous management, we didn't feel safe presenting new ideas. I'm listening. Andre walked her through the prototype. It was innovative, elegant, and exactly the kind of forward-thinking work Natalie wanted to encourage. The team had clearly put significant effort into developing the concept. This is excellent, Natalie said when they finished. Really excellent. How much development time would you need to make this production ready? Maybe 3 months with a dedicated team, Andre said. You have it. I'm greenlighting this project. You'll report directly to the CTO. I want weekly updates on progress. And Andre, I'm promoting you to senior developer effective immediately. Your team members will all receive bonuses for this work. The team erupted in excited chatter. Andre looked stunned. You're actually going to support this? Just like that. Just like that. This is exactly the kind of innovation I want to see. You identified a need, developed a solution, and had the courage to present it. That deserves to be rewarded. After they left, buzzing with excitement, Jerome called. I saw the all-hands meeting recording. Well done. You're really transforming the culture there. It feels good. People are responding to being treated with respect and given opportunities. It's not complicated, really. Just basic human decency applied to business. Yet somehow rare in corporate America, Jerome noted. How are you feeling physically? You're getting close to your due date. I'm fine. Tired sometimes, but fine. The baby's healthy. My doctor says everything looks good. And personally? How are you doing with everything that's happened? Natalie considered the question. I'm good, Jerome. Really good. I don't think about Brandon anymore except when he tries to contact me, which he's still doing occasionally. But even then it's just annoying, not hurtful. He's still trying to reach you? Text messages from different numbers. Emails to my personal account. Even tried to reach out through former mutual friends. It's all variations of the same theme. Either he's sorry and wants another chance, or he's angry and wants to blame me for his problems. You're blocking him each time? Of course. I have no interest in engaging. He made his choices. Now he has to live with them. Has Amber tried contacting you? No, thankfully. I think she understands there's no point. Or maybe she's just focused on her own situation. I heard through Rachel that she's struggling to find work. Her reputation took a serious hit. Good. She should struggle after what she did to those young employees. I agree. But I'm not tracking her or thinking about her. She's simply not part of my life anymore. The conversation shifted to the foundation Natalie wanted to establish. Jerome had been working with lawyers to set up the legal structure. We should call it the Robinson Foundation for Women's Empowerment, he suggested. No, I don't want my name on it. It's not about me. It's about helping women. Let's call it the Phoenix Foundation. Rising from the ashes and all that. Perfect. I'll have the papers drawn up. That evening, Natalie attended a prenatal class at the hospital where she'd be giving birth. It was a class for first-time mothers, covering what to expect during labor and delivery. She was the only woman there without a partner. All the other mothers-to-be had husbands or boyfriends or female partners with them. For a moment, sitting alone in that circle of couples, Natalie felt a pang of loneliness. But then the baby kicked, strong and insistent, and Natalie remembered. She wasn't alone. She had her daughter. She had Jerome and Rachel and a growing circle of supportive colleagues and friends. She had herself, stronger and more capable than she'd ever been. The instructor, a kind woman named Carol, noticed Natalie sitting by herself. Will you have support during the birth? She asked gently during a break. Yes. My lawyer and friend, Jerome, will be my birth partner. And I've hired a doula to help during labor. That's wonderful. You don't need a romantic partner to have a supported birth. You just need people who care about you. After the class, Carol approached Natalie privately. I recognize you from the news. You're the CEO of Preston Technologies. I am. What you said in that press conference about losing everything and rebuilding, it really resonated with me. I was divorced 10 years ago when my daughter was 2. Her father left us with nothing. I had to claw my way back to stability. Seeing you succeed the way you have, it feels validating somehow. Thank you for sharing that. How's your daughter now? She's 12 and amazing. Happy, confident, doing well in school. Growing up with a single mother who worked hard to build a good life taught her resilience. Your daughter will have the same advantage. Natalie felt tears prick her eyes, hormones making her more emotional than usual. I hope so. I want to give her everything I didn't have. Stability, confidence, belief in herself. You will. You already are. Just by being who you are. Driving home that night, Natalie thought about what Carol had said. She was giving her daughter something precious just by example, showing her that women didn't need men to be successful or happy. That strength came from within. That rebuilding was possible. Her phone rang through the car's speaker system. An unknown number. She almost didn't answer but decided to take the call. Hello? Natalie, it's Brandon. Don't hang up, please. I'm calling from a friend's phone because you keep blocking me. Natalie considered disconnecting, but curiosity made her stay on the line. What do you want, Brandon? I want to apologize. Properly apologize. I've been thinking a lot about everything and I realize I was wrong. About so much. The affair, the divorce, the things I said to you. All of it. Okay. That's it? Just okay? What do you want me to say? That I forgive you? That I understand? I don't care enough to do either, Brandon. That's harsh. It's honest. You treated me terribly. You cheated, you lied, you tried to destroy me during the divorce. You mocked me at the gala. You've spent weeks trying to paint yourself as the victim. Why would I care about your apology now? Because I mean it. I really am sorry. And I need help, Natalie. I can't find work. No one will hire me after the fraud allegations. Amber left me when the money ran out. I'm living in a friend's spare room. I have nothing. I'm sorry to hear you're struggling, but that's not my problem to solve. You could help me. You could give me a reference, tell people the fraud thing was blown out of proportion. You could hire me at Preston or one of your other companies. Natalie almost laughed. Brandon, you stole from the company. You took credit for other people's work. You created a hostile work environment. Why would I hire you? Because we have history. Because you know I'm capable of good work when I try. Because you're successful now and you can afford to be generous. I am generous. To people who deserve it. To employees who work hard and act ethically. To women who need help rebuilding their lives. But you don't deserve my help. You deserve exactly what you're experiencing. Consequences. So you're just going to let me suffer? I'm not letting you do anything. You're suffering because of your own choices. That's not my responsibility. The Natalie I married would have helped me. The Natalie you married was weak and afraid and desperate for your approval. I'm not her anymore. And honestly, that woman should have never existed. You didn't marry me, Brandon. You married a version of me that I created to please you. The real me, the person I actually am, she wouldn't have put up with your behavior for a day. So this is who you really are? Cold and vindictive. No. This is who I am when I have boundaries and self-respect. You're just not used to that because I never had those things with you. I made mistakes, Natalie. But I'm trying to do better. Doesn't that count for something? You're trying to do better now because you have no other choice. Where was this desire to improve when you were having an affair? When you were stealing from the company? When you were treating junior employees poorly? You're not sorry you did those things. You're sorry you got caught and that there were consequences. That's not fair. Life isn't fair, Brandon. You taught me that when you left me pregnant and alone with nothing. Now you're learning the same lesson. And unlike you, I don't feel obligated to shield you from it. I need this job, Natalie. I'm desperate. Then I suggest you start developing actual skills instead of relying on manipulation and theft. Get training in something real. Build genuine expertise. Be the kind of employee someone would want to hire. How am I supposed to do that with no money? The same way I built a software company with no money. Hard work, determination, and refusing to give up. You figure it out, Brandon. Just like I had to figure it out when you left me with nothing. This isn't the same thing. You're right. It's not. Because when I lost everything, I lost it to someone else's betrayal and cruelty. You lost everything because of your own poor choices. So actually, you have even less excuse for failure than I did. There was a long silence on the line. I was wrong about you, Brandon said finally. I thought you were weak. I thought leaving you would break you completely. Instead, you became so much more than I ever imagined you could be. That says more about your lack of imagination than about me. This is who I always was, Brandon. You just never bothered to actually see me. I see you now. Too late. Goodbye, Brandon. Don't call me again. She disconnected before he could respond. Then she added his friend's number to her block list. By the time she got home, Natalie felt emotionally exhausted but also liberated. That conversation had been necessary. It had allowed her to say everything she'd needed to say, to set clear boundaries, to make absolutely certain Brandon understood there was no path back into her life. She changed into comfortable pajamas and made herself dinner. As she ate, the baby did somersaults in her belly. That was your father on the phone? Natalie said aloud. He wanted me to help him out of the mess he created. But you know what? That's not my job anymore. My job is to take care of you and build a good life for us. That's where my energy goes. She thought about the foundation she was establishing. The Phoenix Foundation would help women in situations similar to where she'd been. Women who needed financial support, business training, mentorship, childcare assistance while they rebuilt their lives. It would be her way of turning her pain into purpose. Of ensuring that other women didn't have to struggle alone the way she had. The next morning, Natalie received an email from a major business magazine requesting an interview for their Women in Leadership issue. She agreed, seeing it as another opportunity to share her story and hopefully inspire others. The interview took place in her office, the journalist a professional woman who asked thoughtful questions. What would you say to women who are currently in the situation you were in 6 months ago? Facing divorce, financial uncertainty, feeling like they've lost everything? Natalie thought carefully before answering. I'd say that your current circumstances don't define your future potential. I tell them that being afraid is normal, but staying paralyzed by fear is a choice. I'd encourage them to inventory their skills, their knowledge, their strengths, and then figure out how to monetize those assets. That sounds easier said than done. It absolutely is. It's incredibly hard. There were days when I wanted to give up, when everything felt impossible. But I kept going because I had to. Because my daughter deserved a mother who fought for their future. And because somewhere deep inside, I knew I was capable of more than I'd been allowing myself to be. What role did anger play in your motivation? You must have been angry at your ex-husband. I was furious at first. Absolutely rage-filled. But I learned that anger is only useful if you channel it productively. I used my anger as fuel to work harder, to prove wrong everyone who'd underestimated me. But I didn't let it consume me or make me bitter. Some would say that buying the company where your ex-husband worked was an act of revenge. Some would be wrong. I bought Preston Technologies because it was a sound business investment with great potential. My ex-husband's employment there was coincidental. His termination was based on evidence of fraud and misconduct, not personal vendetta. The fact that justice and business success aligned in this case doesn't make it revenge. The interview continued for another hour, covering everything from Natalie's business strategy to her plans for balancing motherhood and executive leadership. When it ended, the journalist thanked her warmly. This has been one of the most inspiring interviews I've done. Your story is going to resonate with a lot of people. I hope it helps someone, Natalie said sincerely. That's the point of sharing it. As her pregnancy entered the final weeks, Natalie began to slow down slightly. Not much, she was still working full days and managing the company effectively. But she listened to her body, took breaks when needed, and started delegating more responsibilities to her capable executive team. She'd assembled a strong leadership group who shared her vision and values. People she trusted to make good decisions and maintain the culture she was building. Rachel had become not just her assistant but a genuine friend. They had lunch together several times a week, and Rachel was planning to be at the hospital when Natalie gave birth. You've built something amazing here, Rachel said one afternoon as they reviewed the quarterly results. Profit margins are up, employee satisfaction is the highest it's been in years, and clients are thrilled with the improved service. We built it, Natalie corrected. This isn't just my success. It's everyone's. But you made it possible. You created the environment where good work could flourish. That's leadership. Natalie smiled. I just treated people the way I wish I'd been treated. With respect and recognition. It's not complicated. Maybe not complicated but apparently rare. You should be proud of what you've accomplished. I am. Not just the business success but the cultural transformation. That matters more to me than any financial metric. That evening, as Natalie prepared for bed, she reviewed the plans for the Phoenix Foundation. The legal structure was in place. The board of directors was assembled, all people with expertise in helping women overcome economic hardship. The initial funding was secured from her personal wealth. The foundation would launch after her maternity leave, probably in about 4 months. But the groundwork was being laid now. Natalie placed her hands on her belly, feeling her daughter's movements. You're going to grow up watching your mother help other women the way I wish someone had helped me. You're going to see that success isn't just about personal achievement. It's about lifting others up too. The baby seemed to respond with a particularly vigorous kick and Natalie laughed. Yeah, you're going to be just fine. Strong and opinionated and ready to take on the world. I can already tell. As she drifted off to sleep that night, Natalie felt a deep sense of contentment. She'd built something meaningful. Not just a successful company but a life she was proud of. a life that aligned with her values and showcased her strengths. And she'd done it all on her own terms without compromising who she was or what she believed in. That was worth more than any amount of money or any measure of revenge. She'd won by becoming herself. And that victory was permanent. 8 months pregnant now, Natalie was preparing for maternity leave. She'd be taking 3 months off after the baby was born, longer than many female CEOs felt they could afford. But Natalie had built a strong executive team specifically so she could step away without the company suffering. Her replacement during her leave would be Patricia, the chief operations officer who'd impressed Natalie with her competence and integrity. Patricia would serve as interim CEO while Natalie focused on her new daughter. "I'm honored you trust me with this," Patricia said during their transition planning meeting. "I won't let you down. I know you won't. You're more than capable. And I'll be available for any major decisions or crises, but day-to-day operations are yours." They went through various scenarios, established communication protocols, and reviewed ongoing projects. Natalie felt confident leaving the company in Patricia's hands. The week before her due date, Natalie had one final obligation. A major industry conference where she'd agreed to be the keynote speaker months ago. Her doctor had cleared her to travel as long as she took precautions. Jerome insisted on accompanying her. "You're not flying across the country alone while 9 months pregnant." "I'm 8.5 months pregnant," Natalie corrected with amusement. "Same difference. I'm coming with you." The conference was in San Francisco, a 3-day event attended by technology leaders from around the world. Natalie was speaking on the final day about ethical leadership in the tech industry. The flight was uneventful. Jerome fussed over her the entire time, making sure she stayed hydrated and comfortable. Natalie found his concern touching even when it became excessive. Their hotel was beautiful, a luxury property near the conference center. Natalie checked in and went straight to her room to rest. The baby had been particularly active during the flight, and Natalie needed to put her feet up. The next morning, she attended several panel discussions and networking sessions. Many people recognized her, wanting to congratulate her on her success or ask about her keynote speech. During lunch, Natalie was approached by a woman who looked vaguely familiar. "Ms. Robinson? I'm Teresa Grant. I was hoping to speak with you about the Phoenix Foundation." Natalie studied her. "Have we met before?" "Not formally. But I was at your press conference last month. What you said about rebuilding after losing everything, it really spoke to me. I'm in a similar situation now. Recently divorced, struggling financially, trying to figure out how to move forward. I'm sorry you're going through that. The foundation will be launching in a few months. If you visit the website and fill out an application, we'll consider you for support." "Thank you. I just wanted to tell you personally how much hope your story gave me. When you're in the middle of that darkness, it's hard to believe things can get better. Seeing your success made me think maybe I can do it too." "You absolutely can," Natalie said sincerely. "It won't be easy, but it's possible. And you're stronger than you probably believe right now." They talked for another 15 minutes, Natalie offering practical advice about financial planning, career transitions, and self-care during difficult times. When Teresa left, she had tears in her eyes and a renewed sense of determination. Jerome had watched the exchange from nearby. "You're really good at that. Connecting with people, inspiring them. I just remember how alone I felt. If my story can help someone feel less alone, that matters." That afternoon, between sessions, Natalie was walking through the conference center lobby when she saw him. Brandon. He was across the large space talking to someone at a vendor booth. For a moment, she considered turning around and avoiding him entirely. But then something in her rebelled against the idea of hiding or changing her path because of him. She continued walking, heading toward the coffee station. As she poured herself decaf, she sensed someone approaching. "Natalie." She turned. Brandon stood there, looking worn and older than she remembered. He wore a cheap suit, the kind he would have mocked a year ago. His face was drawn and there were circles under his eyes. "Brandon, what are you doing here?" "Working a vendor booth. I got a job with a small software company. They couldn't afford conference attendance fees, so I'm here promoting their products." "I see." They stood in awkward silence. Other conference attendees were beginning to notice them, whispering and pointing. The story of their history had been widely reported. "You look good," Brandon said quietly. "Pregnancy suits you." "Thank you." "How much longer?" "About 2 weeks until my due date." "Are you excited?" "Very." More silence. Natalie sipped her coffee, waiting for him to say whatever he'd approached her to say. "I saw you're the keynote speaker tomorrow," he finally said. "That's impressive. You've really made it to the top. I've worked hard. I know. I assume you have. Based on everything you've accomplished. He shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. Natalie, I want to apologize again. Properly, face to face. I was terrible to you. During our marriage, during the divorce, at the gala, all of it. I treated you like you were nothing when you were actually everything. Natalie studied him carefully. He seemed genuine, but she'd learned not to trust surface appearances. What do you want from me, Brandon? Forgiveness? Absolution? A second chance? Maybe just understanding. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I want you to know that I recognize how wrong I was. About everything. Okay, you were wrong. I understand that you understand that. Does that make you feel better? No. Because I also understand that it doesn't change anything. That you've moved on and built this amazing life, and I'm just the guy who almost destroyed you. You didn't almost destroy me. You tried to destroy me. There's a difference. Fair enough. He looked down at his worn shoes. I lost everything, you know. Amber, my reputation, any chance at the career I wanted. I'm starting over at the bottom, working for a company that pays me barely enough to survive. I'm sorry you're struggling, Natalie said, and meant it sincerely. I don't wish suffering on you, Brandon. But I also can't fix your problems for you. I'm not asking you to. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying to be better. I'm going to therapy. I'm working on understanding why I made the choices I did. I'm trying to become someone I can be proud of. That's good. You should do that. And I want you to know that I'm proud of you. Even though I have no right to be, even though my opinion doesn't matter, I am. You're incredible, Natalie. You always were. I just couldn't see it. Natalie felt a strange mixture of emotions. Not forgiveness exactly, and certainly not any desire to reconnect. But maybe a kind of closure. I hope you figure things out, Brandon. I hope you become the person you're trying to be. But that has to be for yourself, not for me or anyone else. I know. He hesitated. Your baby is it? She's mine. That's all that matters. Right. Of course. He looked like he wanted to say more but couldn't find the words. Finally, he just said, "Take care, Natalie. Congratulations on everything." He walked away before she could respond. Natalie watched him go, feeling an unexpected sense of peace. That encounter had been awkward but also necessary. It had shown her just how completely she'd moved on. Looking at Brandon now, worn down and struggling, she felt no satisfaction in his difficulties. But she also felt no desire to help him or reconnect with him in any way. He was simply someone from her past, relevant only as a lesson in what she wouldn't accept anymore. Jerome appeared at her side. I saw that. You okay? I'm fine. Actually, I'm better than fine. Seeing him just confirmed what I already knew. I'm completely over that part of my life. He looked rough. He's dealing with the consequences of his choices. That's appropriate. That evening, Natalie went to dinner with several other conference speakers, all successful women in technology. The conversation was energizing, full of ideas and possibilities. One woman, a venture capitalist named Monica, brought up Natalie's story. I have to tell you, what you've accomplished is inspiring. But I'm curious about something. Do you ever worry that people will always define you by your ex-husband? That you'll be the woman who bought her ex's company rather than just a successful CEO? Natalie considered the question thoughtfully. At first I worried about that. I thought maybe people would always see me through that lens. But I've realized something. My story is my story. It includes Brandon and the divorce and the betrayal. But it also includes everything I built afterward. The software I developed. The companies I turned around. The culture I'm creating at Preston Technologies. She paused, gathering her thoughts. People can choose to focus on the drama if they want. But my work speaks louder than any narrative about revenge or getting even. The company's success, the employee satisfaction, the innovation we're producing, that's what actually matters. The rest is just entertainment for people who aren't paying attention to the substance. Well said, Monica agreed. And you're right. In 5 years, people will remember you as the CEO who transformed Preston Technologies, not as the woman who bought her ex's company. That's the goal. The next morning, Natalie prepared for her keynote speech. She'd written and rewritten it multiple times, wanting to get the message exactly right. Jerome helped her get ready, making sure she had water and that she was comfortable in the chair provided for speakers who needed to sit during their presentations. You're going to be amazing, he assured her. I hope so. This is a big audience. Industry leaders, potential clients, competitors. I want to make an impact. You will. Just speak from the heart like you always do. The auditorium was packed when Natalie took the stage. Over 2,000 people filled the seats, all waiting to hear what she had to say. She sat in the chair, adjusted the microphone, and began. Good morning. Thank you for being here. I'm Natalie Robinson, CEO of Preston Technologies. But that's not how I want to start this speech. Because titles and positions, while important, don't tell you who someone actually is. She paused, letting that sink in. 7 months ago, I was at the absolute lowest point of my life. I was divorced, broke, and pregnant. By every external measure, I had failed. Failed at marriage, failed at financial stability, failed at the life I'd tried to build. The room was completely silent. But here's what I learned during that time. External measures of success are often deeply flawed. They tell us that career advancement is more important than personal integrity. That financial wealth matters more than inner strength. That being part of a couple is more valuable than being whole as an individual. She looked out at the audience, making eye contact with people in different sections. All of those measures are wrong. Real success isn't about what you have or what title you hold. It's about who you are when everything else is stripped away. It's about your integrity when no one is watching. It's about your resilience when life knocks you down. She continued, talking about ethical leadership in technology. About creating companies that valued people as much as profits. About innovation that served humanity rather than just shareholders. About the responsibility that came with power and influence. We in the tech industry have tremendous power to shape society. The products we create, the policies we implement, the cultures we foster, they all ripple outward in ways we can't always predict. That power comes with responsibility. She talked about Preston Technologies' transformation, the changes they'd implemented, the focus on ethical practices and genuine innovation. We've proven that you don't have to sacrifice values for profit. That you can create a positive work environment and still be financially successful. That treating people with respect and recognizing their contributions actually improves performance. As she spoke, Natalie could see people nodding, taking notes, leaning forward with interest. But beyond business strategy, I want to talk about resilience. Because that's really what this is about. Life is going to knock you down. It's going to hand you losses you didn't see coming. It's going to break your heart and challenge your confidence and make you question everything. She paused, her hand naturally moving to her pregnant belly. When that happens, you have a choice. You can stay down, accept defeat, believe that the people who hurt you or underestimated you were right. Or you can decide that you're worth more than your worst moment. That your past doesn't define your potential. That you have the strength to rebuild. I chose to rebuild. And in doing so, I discovered that I was capable of so much more than I'd ever imagined. I discovered that the limitations I thought I had were actually just limitations I'd accepted from other people. And I discovered that true success comes from being authentically yourself, not from trying to fit someone else's version of who you should be. The applause started then, growing louder as she continued. So my message to you today is this. Whatever you're building, whether it's a company or a career or just a life you can be proud of, build it on a foundation of integrity. Value people. Recognize contributions. Create environments where innovation and ethics coexist. And most importantly, never forget that business success means nothing if it comes at the cost of your humanity. She concluded to a standing ovation. People on their feet, applauding enthusiastically. Some were crying. Others were nodding vigorously. As Natalie left the stage, several people approached her wanting to talk. To thank her for her words. To share their own stories of overcoming adversity. To ask her advice on building ethical companies. She stayed for over an hour talking with anyone who wanted to connect. Each conversation reinforced why she'd shared her story so publicly. Because people needed to know that rebuilding was possible. That failure wasn't final. That strength could be found even in the darkest moments. When she finally made it back to her hotel room that evening, exhausted but satisfied, Jerome was waiting with a proud smile. That was the best keynote speech I've ever heard. You had the entire room captivated. It felt good. Scary but good. Being that vulnerable in front of so many people, sharing that much of my story, it was intense. But necessary. People need authentic leadership. They need to see that successful people also struggle, also doubt themselves, also have to fight for what they achieve. Natalie kicked off her shoes and sat on the bed with a sigh of relief. My feet are swollen. This baby needs to come out soon. Jerome laughed. 2 more weeks. You can make it. I better. I have so much to do before she arrives. They flew home the next day. Natalie spent the flight reviewing plans for her maternity leave and making final preparations for the baby's arrival. The nursery was ready, painted a soft yellow with white furniture. Clothes were washed and put away. Car seat installed. Hospital bag packed. Natalie felt a mixture of excitement and terror. She was about to become a mother, to be solely responsible for another human being. It was daunting and wonderful in equal measure. But as she felt her daughter move inside her, Natalie knew she was ready. She'd overcome so much to get to this point. She'd proven her strength and resilience. She'd built a life worth bringing a child into. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them the same way she'd faced everything else. With determination, integrity, and unwavering belief in herself. And that would be enough. Would have to be. Because she was all her daughter would have, and she was determined to be more than enough. Natalie went into labor at 3 in the morning on a Tuesday, exactly 1 week before her due date. She'd been having contractions for hours trying to sleep through them, but they'd gotten too strong to ignore. She called Jerome first. He answered on the second ring, alert despite the early hour. "It's time? It's time. Can you meet me at the hospital? I'm on my way." 20 minutes. Natalie called the doula next, a calm woman named Sarah who'd been preparing her for natural childbirth. Then she called for a car service, not trusting herself to drive. The hospital was quiet at this hour, most of the world still sleeping. Natalie checked into the maternity ward and was taken to a delivery room. Jerome arrived shortly after, bringing the go-bag she'd packed weeks ago. Sarah the doula appeared soon after, ready to help Natalie through labor. The hours that followed were the most intense of Natalie's life. Contractions that took her breath away. The work of bringing a baby into the world. The support of Jerome and Sarah, coaching her through each stage. "You're doing amazing," Sarah kept saying. "You're so strong." And Natalie felt strong even in the pain. This was the culmination of everything. The final step in her transformation from broken to whole. At 2:37 p.m., after 11 hours of labor, Isabella Rose Robinson entered the world. Tiny, perfect, screaming with healthy lungs. The nurse placed her on Natalie's chest, and Natalie felt tears stream down her face. This was her daughter. This was the reason for everything she'd built. "Hi, baby girl," she whispered. "I've been waiting for you." Isabella had dark eyes and a head full of black hair. She looked up at her mother with an expression of pure trust, and Natalie felt her heart expand in ways she hadn't known were possible. "She's beautiful," Jerome said from beside the bed, his own eyes wet with emotion. "Absolutely perfect." The next few days were a blur of learning to breastfeed, changing diapers, and trying to sleep between Isabella's frequent feedings. Rachel came to visit, bringing flowers and a stuffed animal. Patricia stopped by to assure Natalie that the company was running smoothly. Other visitors came too. Employees from Preston Technologies bringing gifts and congratulations. Business contacts sending flowers and cards. Even strangers who'd been inspired by Natalie's story reaching out with messages of support. But the most meaningful moments were the quiet ones. Late at night when it was just Natalie and Isabella. Her daughter sleeping on her chest, the weight of her small body grounding and real. "Your father doesn't know about you," Natalie told her sleeping daughter one night. "He doesn't know you're here, that you're real, that you're perfect. And that's his loss, not yours. Because you have me and I have enough love for both parents." She thought about Brandon's question at the conference. Whether the baby was his. The answer was yes, biologically. But in every way that mattered, Isabella was solely Natalie's. After 4 days they went home to the apartment. Natalie had hired a night nurse for the first 2 weeks to help with feeding so she could get some rest. The nurse, an experienced woman named Gloria, was a godsend. "You sleep," Gloria would say firmly. "I'll handle the night feeds. You need rest to recover." With Gloria's help, Natalie found her rhythm. Days spent caring for Isabella, learning her cries and her needs. Nights getting enough sleep to function. Slowly, the exhaustion of early motherhood became manageable. She'd taken photos of Isabella and posted them to social media with a simple caption. "Isabella Rose Robinson. Born September 10th. My greatest accomplishment." The response was overwhelming. Thousands of comments congratulating her, sharing their own motherhood stories, expressing admiration for her doing this alone. One comment caught her attention. It was from Teresa, the woman she'd met at the conference. "Seeing you embrace motherhood while building your empire gives me so much hope. Thank you for showing what's possible." Natalie replied, "You're going to build something amazing too. I believe in you." Week by week, Natalie settled into her new reality. Being a mother changed her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Made her softer in some ways, fiercer in others. She looked at Isabella and saw all the potential in the world. Saw a future where her daughter could be anything, do anything, become anyone. And Natalie was determined to create a world where that potential could be fully realized. The Phoenix Foundation officially launched when Isabella was 6 weeks old. A virtual ceremony where Natalie announced the first round of grants and scholarships for women rebuilding their lives after divorce or financial hardship. She did the presentation from home, holding Isabella in one arm while speaking to the camera. The Phoenix Foundation exists because I know how hard it is to rebuild from nothing. I know the isolation, the fear, the moments when giving up seems easier than continuing. This foundation is for women in those moments. To provide financial support, yes, but also mentorship, community, and the message that they're not alone. Applications poured in. Hundreds of women sharing their stories, asking for help. The foundation's board reviewed them carefully, selecting recipients based on need, potential, and determination. One of the first recipients was Teresa. The grant she received allowed her to enroll in a coding boot camp, the first step toward a new career in tech. "You changed my life," she wrote in her thank you note. "Not just with the money but with the hope. Knowing someone believed I could do this made me believe it too." When Isabella was 2 months old, Natalie prepared to return to work. She'd arranged for a private office nursery at Preston Technologies, a soundproofed room where Isabella and her nanny could stay close by. "I know most CEOs don't bring their babies to the office," Natalie said during an executive meeting her first week back. "But I'm not most CEOs. And this company is going to support working mothers at every level, starting with me." The response from employees was positive. Several other mothers mentioned that seeing their CEO unapologetically parent while leading gave them confidence to be more open about their own family needs. Natalie split her time between strategic planning and pumping breast milk, between client meetings and checking on Isabella, between board presentations and afternoon naps when her daughter slept. It was exhausting and fulfilling in equal measure. Patricia had done an excellent job as interim CEO. The company had continued to grow and thrive during Natalie's leave. Now, with both of them working together, Preston Technologies was stronger than ever. One afternoon, as Natalie was nursing Isabella in the office nursery, Rachel knocked softly before entering. "Sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here who insists on seeing you. Amber Cross." Natalie looked up, surprised. "What does she want?" She wouldn't say. "Just that she needs to speak with you urgently." "Fine. Give me 10 minutes to finish feeding Isabella and I'll meet her in my office. Have security standing by just in case." 15 minutes later, Natalie sat behind her desk as Amber was escorted in. The woman looked drastically different from the confident, smug person she'd been at the gala. She was thinner, her clothes less expensive, her hair and makeup less polished. "Thank you for seeing me," Amber said, sitting in the chair across from Natalie. "I know you have no reason to." "I don't." "What do you want, Amber?" "I want to apologize. For everything. The affair, the cruelty at the gala, the way I treated you. All of it." Natalie studied her carefully. "Okay. Apology noted. Is that all?" "I also wanted you to know that Brandon and I broke up. He blamed me for getting fired, for ruining his career. The relationship fell apart pretty quickly after that. I'm sorry that happened." "Are you? Really?" "I'm sorry you went through pain, yes. But I'm not sorry about the consequences you faced for your actions. There's a difference." Amber nodded slowly. "Fair. I deserve that." "Why are you really here, Amber?" "Because I don't think it's just to apologize. I'm here because I've spent the last few months thinking about everything that happened. About who I became and the choices I made. And I realized something. I was awful to you because I was jealous." "Jealous of what?" "You were the one Brandon chose. Jealous of your intelligence. Your talent. The way Brandon talked about your ideas, even when he was dismissing them to your face. He knew you were brilliant. I think that's part of why he cheated. Because being with someone smarter than him made him feel inadequate. That's his problem, not mine." "I know. But I participated in it. I helped him tear you down because making you small made me feel bigger. And I'm sorry for that." Natalie considered her words. "I appreciate the apology. But it doesn't change anything. You created a hostile work environment here. You bullied younger employees. You stole their ideas. An apology doesn't undo that harm." "I know. I'm not asking for my job back or for your help. I just needed to tell you that I was wrong. That you didn't deserve how we treated you. And that seeing what you've accomplished, how you've thrived, it's made me realize how much potential I wasted being the person I was." "So what are you going to do now?" "I'm going back to school. Getting my master's degree. Starting over in a different field. Trying to become someone I can actually be proud of." "That's good. You should do that. I saw the announcement about your daughter. She's beautiful." Thank you. Does Brandon know? No. And he won't. Isabella is my daughter, not his. Amber nodded. He doesn't deserve to know her. Not after how he treated you. They sat in silence for a moment. I'm leaving now, Amber said, standing. Thank you for seeing me. I know it was more grace than I deserved. Everyone deserves a chance to apologize and try to be better. What they do with that chance is up to them. After Amber left, Natalie sat quietly for a few minutes, processing the encounter. She felt no satisfaction in Amber's struggles, but she also felt no obligation to help her. Some people had to find their own way back from the damage they'd caused. That wasn't Natalie's responsibility to fix. That evening at home with Isabella, Natalie reflected on how far she'd come. 6 months ago, she'd been preparing to face Brandon and Amber at the gala. Now she'd rebuilt her entire life. Built a company, a career, a family. All on her own terms. Isabella cooed from her bassinet, and Natalie picked her up, cradling her daughter against her chest. You're growing so fast, she whispered. Already 3 months old. Soon you'll be crawling, then walking, then running. And I'll be there for all of it. Cheering you on, picking you up when you fall, showing you what strength looks like. The baby grabbed Natalie's finger, holding tight with surprising strength. That's right. You hold on. You stay strong. And you remember that you come from a mother who rebuilt an empire from nothing. That's in your blood, baby girl. That determination, that refusal to quit, that ability to rise from the ashes. Natalie looked out her apartment window at the city lights. In a few months she'd be moving to a new place. A beautiful house she'd purchased in a safe neighborhood with good schools. A home where Isabella could grow up surrounded by stability and love. Everything she'd never had with Brandon. Everything she'd built for herself and her daughter. The phoenix had risen and she was never going back down. 2 years passed in a beautiful blur of growth and achievement. Isabella transformed from an infant to a toddler, walking and talking and filling Natalie's life with joy. Preston Technologies became an industry leader, known for innovation, ethical practices, and employee satisfaction. The Phoenix Foundation helped over 200 women rebuild their lives, providing grants, mentorship, and support. Each success story felt personal to Natalie, a validation of everything she'd overcome. She'd moved into the house she'd purchased, a beautiful 4-bedroom home with a yard where Isabella could play. The walls were filled with photos of mother and daughter. No ghosts of a failed marriage. No reminders of a life she'd left behind. Just the life she'd built. Natalie had been invited to speak at numerous conferences, written articles for major publications, and been featured on the cover of 3 business magazines. But she never let the attention distract from what mattered. Her daughter. Her company. Her mission to help others. On a Thursday afternoon, Natalie attended a major industry conference in New York, one of the largest tech events of the year. She was there to accept an award for ethical leadership and deliver a brief acceptance speech. Isabella was with her nanny at home, and Jerome had accompanied Natalie to the conference as he often did for major events. The award ceremony was held in a grand ballroom filled with tech industry leaders. Natalie wore a striking green dress, her confidence and success evident in every movement. When her name was called, she walked to the stage to thunderous applause. She accepted the glass trophy and stood at the podium, looking out at the crowd of influential people. Thank you for this honor. Leadership is about more than strategy or profit margins. It's about creating environments where people can thrive, where innovation serves humanity, and where success doesn't require sacrificing integrity. She continued for 5 minutes, outlining her vision for ethical technology and the responsibility of industry leaders. The response was enthusiastic. After the ceremony, during the networking reception, Natalie circulated through the crowd, connecting with peers and potential partners. That's when she saw him. Brandon. He was on the other side of the room, wearing a junior staff badge for a small consulting firm. He looked older, worn, but there was something different about him too. Something humbler. Their eyes met across the room. For a moment, neither moved. Then Brandon took a step toward her, and Natalie prepared herself for whatever conversation was coming. Natalie, he said when he reached her. Congratulations on the award. Well deserved. Thank you, Brandon. I saw your speech. It was powerful. You've really become an incredible leader. I've worked hard. I know. I can see that. Everything you've built, it's impressive. More than impressive. It's inspiring. They stood awkwardly, the weight of their history hanging between them. I've been following your career, Brandon admitted. Not in a creepy way, just professionally. Your success with Preston Technologies, the Phoenix Foundation, your daughter. You've built an amazing life. I have. How are you doing? Better. Not great, but better. I'm working my way back up. Junior consultant now, but it's honest work. I'm learning actual skills instead of just relying on manipulation. It's humbling but necessary. I'm glad you're making progress. I'm in therapy. Dealing with a lot of issues I ignored for too long. Understanding why I made the choices I did. Taking responsibility. That's good. I want you to know something, Brandon said, his voice sincere. I'm genuinely happy for you. Not in a patronizing way or because I think I have any right to be proud of you, but because you deserve every bit of success you've achieved. And I'm sorry I ever made you feel otherwise. Natalie studied him carefully. He seemed genuine, changed by his experiences. Thank you for saying that. It means something even if it doesn't change the past. I know it doesn't. I can't undo the harm I caused. But I can at least acknowledge it and work to be better. Your daughter, he said hesitantly. Isabella. I saw the photos you posted. She's beautiful. She is. Is she? She's mine, Natalie said firmly. That's all that matters. Brandon nodded, accepting the boundary. Of course. I don't have any right to know more than that. I just hope she grows up knowing how amazing her mother is. She will. I'll make sure of it. They stood in silence for a moment, the conversation feeling complete. I should go, Brandon said. I don't want to take up more of your time. But I'm glad I got to see you to say what I needed to say. You've become everything you were always capable of being. And I'm sorry I tried to keep you from that. Goodbye, Brandon. Goodbye, Natalie. He walked away, disappearing into the crowd. Natalie watched him go, feeling a profound sense of closure. That conversation had been important. Not because she needed his approval or acknowledgement, but because it confirmed what she already knew. She'd won. Not by destroying him or getting revenge, but by becoming so fully herself that his opinion no longer mattered. His presence in her life was reduced to a moment in her past, relevant only as a lesson learned. Jerome appeared at her side. I saw that. How do you feel? Good. Really good. Looking at him now, I don't feel anger or satisfaction or anything negative. I just feel grateful. Grateful? That he left me. That he forced me to find my own strength. That he removed himself from my life so I could build something real. In a weird way, him leaving was the best thing that ever happened to me. You would have found your strength eventually. Maybe. But being forced to find it faster, to depend only on myself, that shaped me in ways I needed. So yeah, I'm grateful. Not to him specifically, but to the situation that made me become who I am now. They mingled for another hour before heading back to their hotel. Natalie was exhausted but content. This chapter of her life felt truly closed. She'd faced Brandon one last time, felt nothing but peace and moved on completely. The next morning she flew home to Isabella. The moment she walked through the door, her daughter ran to her, arms outstretched. Mama? Natalie scooped her up, holding her tight. Hi, baby girl. I missed you so much. Missed you too. Did you win? I did. I won a special award. Because you're amazing, Isabella said with the absolute certainty of a 2-year-old. Because I work hard and treat people kindly. That's what real winning is. She spent the evening playing with Isabella, reading stories, giving her a bath, putting her to bed. The simple rhythms of motherhood that grounded her more than any business achievement. After Isabella was asleep, Natalie sat in her home office and reviewed the proposals for the Phoenix Foundation's expansion. They were planning to open regional offices, provide more comprehensive support, reach even more women. She thought about all the people her story had touched. The women who'd reached out saying she inspired them. The employees at Preston Technologies who felt valued and supported. The clients who appreciated working with an ethical company. The daughter who would grow up seeing strength and determination modeled every day. That was her legacy. Not revenge on an ex-husband. Not some dramatic story of getting even. But genuine transformation and the ripple effects of choosing to rebuild rather than remain defeated. Her phone buzzed with a message from Teresa, the woman she'd met at the San Francisco conference 2 years ago. Just accepted a senior developer position at a major tech firm. 6-figure salary. Full benefits. I did it, Natalie. I rebuilt my life just like you said I could. Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. Natalie smiled and typed back, you did this yourself. I just reminded you of what was possible. So proud of you. She leaned back in her chair, feeling deeply satisfied. This was what success looked like. Not wealth or awards or recognition, though those were nice. But knowing that her journey had helped others. that her refusal to stay defeated had inspired others to fight for their own futures. She looked at the photo on her desk. Natalie and Isabella at the park, both smiling, genuinely happy. That happiness wasn't dependent on a relationship or external validation. It was built on a foundation of self-knowledge, hard work, and the courage to become who she was always meant to be. The phoenix had risen from the ashes. But more importantly, she taught others they could rise too. And that, Natalie thought, was worth everything she'd been through to get here. She turned off her office light and went to check on Isabella one more time before bed. Her daughter slept peacefully, surrounded by stuffed animals and the security of a mother who would always fight for her. Natalie kissed her forehead gently. "I love you, baby girl. Tomorrow we start another day of building our beautiful life. Together." She walked to her own bedroom, feeling the kind of bone-deep contentment that came from living authentically. No pretense. No trying to be someone else's version of acceptable. Just herself, in all her strength and vulnerability and determination. The story that had begun with betrayal and loss had ended with triumph and purpose. Not because of revenge, but because of resilience. Not because she'd destroyed her enemies, but because she'd built something beautiful from ruins. Natalie Robinson had won the only battle that mattered. The battle to become fully herself. And that victory would last forever.